So this is the biggest. Okay, so this is a side topic, and if you're not local, you might not understand. But my biggest irritation of like whenever we try to rent a place on the island or try and rent a place like an Airbnb or wherever, nowhere ever has saunas, and I don't know why. If you're listening from a Scandinavian country, you guys have saunas everywhere, and it's awesome.
They know what's up.
They know what's up. But in Canada, nobody's doing saunas, and we need more saunas. Like, I want to rent a place. I want a sauna. Like, saunas are the best. Like, why aren't we saunaing more?
I don't know. I like wet heat is not, I pass out in wet heat. It's like not good for me.
Well, you need more practice. Like,
I need more practice. Okay.
Yeah, sauna is just about practice. Like in Finland, they have sauna competitions where they get a bunch of dudes and they sit in a sauna and they get it as hot as they can, and whoever's left in it at the end wins.
Do they win money?
That seems maybe dangerous.
I don't know what they win. I don't think it's anything. Like, I don't think that this is not like a regulated sport. This is like just a thing that they do.
Right.
But it is. Saunas are the best, especially if you get like a proper one with hot rocks and you put the water on it and you get it up to like 100 degrees Celsius and it smells like pine.
Okay.
You mix in some cold showers in between.
Huh.
It's amazing.
All right.
I'm telling you, more people need to get on saunas here.
So the moral of the story is more saunas. That's our show. Welcome
more
to chatWater.
Saunas.
That's it. Good night, everyone. That's it.
That's our message. That's our episode tonight. Actually,
that's
our
whole
episode tonight is a very, very exciting one. First of all, we have Cody joining us tonight.
Cody.
Yes, Cody's always here. And he's here for all shows. And I know we don't always see his face, but you guys see him in chat. But he is always with us. But Cody is joining us in person tonight.
So exciting.
I believe Sean's back next week. We don't know. Sean is back
next week.
But Sean will be back next week. But Cody will join us tonight, and we're going to be talking about creating a character from scratch.
It's going to be so exciting.
This topic,
probably thank sponsors first.
Yes.
Sponsors. So thank you to Legendcraft and Silverwing Armory, our two fantastic sponsors who partner with us. We are so grateful that they work with us. If you like anything from their sites, at legendcraft.ca, or Silverwing Armory has an Etsy shop. If you enter the code Blackwater at checkout, you get 10% off at Silverwing and 5% off at Legendcraft. And that goes to support us and also supports these fantastic Canadian companies, which is always important to support local business. We're also partnered with Fairy Dragon Dice. She is our dice goddess, and she has made us some beautiful dice. Please go check out our Instagram for that. And she will be having a shop update in like 5 days. So if you're interested in getting some of her dice, head on over to her shop. Hi, Rogue. Yeah, Rogue's really excited about Fairy Dragon Dice too. Head on over to her shop, which is online, and you can pick up some of those for yourself.
That picture she posted, that picture she posted of that set, it comes with a coin.
Yeah.
That you can flip.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what is like, it looked like a pog, and I was like, what is that? And then I realized it's like a 50-50. It's like a D2 essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, which are very exciting.
It's very, very pretty.
The D2s are really, really cool. I really, really like them. And we're also the biggest thank you to our fantastic, wonderful, amazing artist, Tiana, who we love very dearly. Very, very fun. We filmed something last night that we will be releasing soon in the future, very soon. And Tiana, we just got the word today. Tiana's going to do some art for us for it. So I'm very excited about that. We always love more art. Big thank you to Tiana, always, and biggest amount of love. Yeah, that's our, and this week on Wednesday, we have Blackwater's newest show premiering, Character Development, with myself and Jen and Len. If you have any problems, if you have any questions, if you're in need of some advice, Len, Jen, and I are all in professions where we have been helping folks in some way, shape, or form for the last little while. And that's not to say our advice is the best, but I'd like to think it's decent.
It's pretty good. It's where I generally go for advice.
Well, thanks. That means a lot. So we're going to be like having some letters written. There's some letters that are written from some NPCs who are in need of advice in the world. So we're going to be reading those and we're going to be giving some advice to them. But if you have any questions, there is a link in our link tree on our Instagram at Blackwater D&D, and you can submit your questions anonymously. We don't reveal names or anything like that. So you can submit your questions there, and we're happy to help because we care about you. And that's what I got. That's what I got for announcements.
That's awesome. I'm very excited for the new show.
Thank you.
I love it. It has like kind of like a D&D Dear Jane, or it was Dear Jane, right? Or was it
Dear Abby?
Dear Abby.
Yeah.
It has sort of a D&D
like,
Dear Abby
think
feel.
halfway between like Dear Abby and Savage Love if it was set in the universe that we plan. That's what we're going for.
So one quick question about the show,
Yeah.
without ruining or giving anything away.
Yes.
You guys are yourselves, right? You're not like
we
in
are
character.
ourselves.
Okay.
Yes, we're not in character. We toyed with the idea of being in character, but I was like, oh my gosh, that is another night of the week where I have to do Neppy's voice, which is great and fantastic, but that would be a lot for me just to talk as Neppy for like straight for 2 hours.
I've been practicing in case you ever go away and I need to take your place, piloting her.
Cannot
listening
wait.
to a lot of like Julie Andrews and
Yes.
just like working on that sort of.
Yes. I think it was Tim's mom or someone else in the chat who said that Neppy sounds like Julie Andrews. And then for like, I know I've said this before, but like for like 2 days, I couldn't stop watching Julie Andrews videos. And now I just think she just sounds more like Julie Andrews. So I don't know if that's like a
So it wasn't an inspiration.
No.
Oh, it just kind of happened.
It just kind of happened. Yeah, I have no idea where her voice came from. I just started playing with an English accent.
That's one of the things we'll be talking about tonight, about making a character,
Yeah.
choosing a voice and doing that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So should we roll that intro?
Let's roll that intro.
Need a dance.
Woohoo. What a delight. What a treat.
I love that intro.
Thank you so much.
That's a great intro.
I'm getting pretty good at making intros. I gotta say, I've made, I think 3 now for Blackwater stuff, and it's very satisfying, the like making of an intro. Very good. I mean, obviously not as good as the like original Blackwater intro, but again, I can't sing like
It's the same as those like silly little Instagram videos that I've been making. It just it brings you such joy to make anything. Just making stuff is always such a pleasure.
Blackwater has been my like sole creative outlet in COVID. Like this is just what I've been doing while I've been in quarantine. It's been like, okay, all of this creative energy that I usually have for other things, and this is where it's going. This is how it's going to go for now. So
it's a pretty good place to put it.
Right? So yeah.
Speaking of creating, tonight we're going to talk about rolling a character. This sort of came as a byproduct of the fact that I know we have a lot of people in our regular stream, and hopefully they're join us for our chatWater stream, who are just getting into D&D. They sort of discovered D&D. They checked us out, and they want to start playing themselves, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it. And it came from a discussion where the first time that I played, there's always a sort of like you want to pretend like you know what's going on. You want to like, yeah, I can totally figure it out. And then when you work your way through that DM book, when you first open it,
oh my gosh,
dungeon guide, it's so confusing, and it's talking about all these dice you have to roll, and if you're not familiar with the dice, and I, at that point, I'd been watching quite a lot of Critical Role and listening to like the Adventure Zone and like that kind of thing, and I was like, I know D&D, like I've watched people play it, and then you have to like create your own character. It can be quite daunting.
Totally,
and,
it's a lot.
It is a lot. And when I told Em about this, Em told me she had a surefire character creation method.
I do.
And I thought, it's too good to pass up. We need to talk about it. Well,
I appreciate you asking. I love building characters. Like if I could just build characters I mean, obviously I love playing them and stuff like that, but like if I could build characters as just like a thing that I did and made a living off that would be so nice. Because I really like building characters narratively, because I think all characters come from stories. And it's, yes, when the mechanics and the narratives kiss. This is so good. I wish I'm going to save that for another day. But if you're new to chatwater, when we go like this, it means the narrative and the mechanics are kissing, and we love that. We love that very much. So yeah, there's lots of info out there about how to build characters based on stats and like the best builds. You could like Google like best build for a barbarian, and they will tell you exactly what class or like race, what background to take, all of the stuff to take. And that's great. And I think that is fantastic for folks who really like building characters that way. But that is not what's going to be happening here tonight.
I will say it is very useful if you're new to the game to know what the sort of stats are that's relevant. So like it is worth a Google. I wouldn't say use it as like your for sure this is what you should put where, but like certain classes you need certain stats to be higher for them to just work mechanically. So it is a good thing to look at.
Yes.
But if you want something that's more interesting to play, then and I also just wanted to quickly add that Cody has made some of my favorite characters. Cody has a real ability.
A knack.
He's got a real knack for it. I mean, we haven't seen many of his characters, but the ones we've seen have always left a real impression, because Cody comes at them from a real sort of like performative like aspect. Like there's always a bit with Cody's characters, and it's
not like just a bit.
Wonderful.
It's like a founding, like a central aspect of themselves that is always like from seeing both Cornelius and what was your character's name in the Stoness?
Lime.
Yes, Lime Stoness. The both of those that I've seen, it's like it just was perfect.
It's given me a complex. Yeah. It really has, because we always, usually when one of us joins, the other one joins as well. It's usually like a package deal when we get to play. And I always know that I'm not like, when we started the Stone Ass one and only this of Cody's face was in the screen, I was like, my character's not interesting enough. Like he's already beat me with his camera placement.
That's it. That's it. You're done.
But I'm hoping that M will be able to help me create better characters for future one-shots so I can outdo Cody.
Okay, is that what we're doing tonight? Okay. So also tonight we are going to be actually building a character, and Tim has graciously enough said that this character will some way, shape, or form be in the Blackwater universe at some point. So the party will maybe come across them at some point. So whatever we build tonight, I will be building along with you folks. And and then we're going to do some rolling. I'm hoping that Yanis and Cody build characters along. And if you're watching at home and I'm going to walk you through how to build a character. Even if you know how to do it, try it this way. It's pretty fun, and I really like it. And then we will be delivering this wonderful character. I gesture that way because Tim's sitting over there, to Tim. And I'm sure we'll be able to hear his thoughts on it next week when he joins us on chatwater for his episode.
Spoilers, if you haven't seen the last episode, plug your ears. But if you have, I'm working on Tim to make this character what is inside of the God Egg. Now, he hasn't committed officially yet, but I think I can swing him around. So
if anyone can convince him, it's you, Yanis. I would say
I have a way to his heart.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're starting a new campaign or joining an existing one, probably the biggest piece of advice that I can pass along to you about creating a character narratively, particularly, is collaborate with your DM. Ask them questions about the setting and the names and places of the world. If they have any idiosyncrasies about specific places or specific races, or if there's lore tied to those races, ask them about their world, because they do want to gush to you about it. They want to talk to you about the world they're building, because they likely don't have anybody else to talk to about it, because all of the people that they would talk to about it are playing the game and they can't share all that stuff. Ask questions where the DM can elaborate, and even if you come in with a pretty strong idea for what you want as a character, be willing to adjust and be flexible with what their world will allow. Because like if your DM, say for example, doesn't allow gunslingers or there's no guns in the world, then don't be a gunslinger, or like find another table if that's the hill that you're going to die on. If you're like, I need to be a gunslinger, maybe that table's not the right one for you then if this DM doesn't have guns in the game.
That actually happened exactly like that for Tim's birthday one shot. I didn't consult with Adam and I built a full gunslinger
right
completely, and then I sent him the character and he was like, oh, I forgot to mention there are no guns in my world. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, it was exactly that. Like I should have communicated with him. I did communicate with him the part that I didn't want to be a dwarf, which I thought was super original. And then Cody beat me on that again by being a more interesting not dwarf. But the gunslinger thing I didn't communicate. So yeah, that's a great point. And also a lot of times, like, especially if you're new, your DM is not new. There are rare occasions that everyone's new at the table, including the DM.
Totally.
But typically your DM's going to have at least some experience as a player.
Yes.
And so they're going to be able to help you, build something that works in the world, but also just build something that's going to bring you enjoyment, because it is one thing you learn as you build more characters, what sort of allows you to have fun.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I even think for Tim, for example, if you wanted to build a gunslinger in his world, you got to be a cleric, because the only people who can use guns in this universe are clerics.
Except for Jen's character, but that's a dialogue that she would have had with Tim.
Spooky
in the Maker's one shot.
Oh, in the Maker's one shot. Yes.
But that's a conversation he would have had. Tim and her would have had to make that work narratively.
He's also a paladin, so still like holy weapon, right?
Exactly.
So like the weapon has to be holy. Guns are holy weapons in his universe, which is very cool, and I love that. So I hope everyone is ready at home. We're going to dive right in because it can be a bit of a longer process. So we're going to need a couple things before you get started. We're going to also toss up a link in the chat for a character sheet. But you don't necessarily need to do this paper and pen. You can do this on whatever preferred medium of character building you like, whether that's paper and character sheet or D&D Beyond. If you have money to pay for a subscription for D&D Beyond, or you're in a campaign where your DM is paying for a subscription, fantastic. D&D Beyond is an awesome character building tool. It's very simple. You just click, 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 done. And it's great. I'll be walking you through how to do paper and pencil, because that's just the way that I do things. I don't keep anything in my phone. I have a paper planner. Like I'm completely analog, always have been.
I would say even if you do use D&D Beyond, like it is useful to build a character on paper, even if you then transpose that into D&D Beyond, because the first character I ever built was on D&D Beyond. And I thought I was being super clever by building a character there and saving myself all the effort of doing all the math and all that stuff. But when it came time to actually play the character, you don't always understand where the numbers are coming from that you're using.
Yes.
So when the DM says like, oh, what's your spellcasting modifier? And you don't know where to find that right away, then he's like, oh, you just add this and this and this. And if you don't know what those numbers mean, it can be challenging. So it's always beneficial to build it on paper, especially when you start, just because it helps inform like, where are these numbers coming from? Like, why are we, doing what we're doing? So I started building them on paper and then putting them into D&D Beyond, just because especially when I'm playing a class that I'm not familiar with, it helps inform how it works.
Absolutely. And I think not only that, what I like to do is I like building characters by hand, because it allows me the same thing to learn their intricacies, like where are all these abilities? And by writing down everything on the sheet, I start to learn it and I do it more. And I can be like, okay, everything is laid out in front of me. I don't have to click around to 40,000 different places while I'm also trying to stay in character. I just have my stuff in front of me and it's good to go. So there are a couple different versions of character sheets. If you're someone who you can print them out for free online. There's also this wonderful little thing that you can probably pick up at your local game store or online that comes with like 20 different character sheets, spell casting sheets, and all that kind of stuff inside. A couple different models of character sheet too. There are some character sheets that are like have your stats and stuff and all your ability scores. There's some other ones that have like stats and ability scores broken down by stats. So like stealth is near dexterity, investigations near intelligence, stuff like that. And then generally you're going to also want one that has spellcasting sheets, especially if you're going to be playing a caster. Sometimes character sheets also have like these fantastic little things on the back where you can put in the character's name, age, height, weight, eyes, some stuff about their backgrounds, if they have any affiliation. So really like this is all you need to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like this is it. And a set of dice. And even still, you can get a dice rolling app on your phone and it's good to go. So I am preferential to the kind of the OG character sheet that has all of the stats or the skills in the separate box, because I don't know, I'm the kind of person, I don't know if anybody's noticed so far, that if I like things one way, I like it one way, and that's how I'm gonna do it. Okay, so we have our character sheet here. Great, good to go. Also, this method is much more free than D&D Beyond, because D&D Beyond can be quite expensive if you don't have a subscription yourself.
I thought you meant free as in like freeing, and I was like, what?
I mean, maybe it could be freeing. I don't know. To each their own.
You can play without electricity, so there's that.
Great, good to go.
I mean, if you don't have Wi-Fi, D&D Beyond doesn't work. So I mean, there is something to be said about.
Or if you forget to charge your phone before the game, which I've done, and now all my information is on 8%. And I have to look at it very sparingly.
Very, very slowly and sparingly. A copy of the player's handbook is always important to have around. This stuff is built into D&D Beyond, generally the basic version. So that's also awesome, but it's always good to have this. I found it was really helpful as a player when I was just starting just to read it. Reading some of the background and lore is really cool. It walks through all the things you may need to know, terminology that you're not certain of. So get yourself a copy of the player's handbook. You can also get them in PDF version. They're pretty cheap. Your local game store is going to have one too. Also support local business, support your local game store.
If you're going to get one, I would just say it is super easy to just click and order it off of Amazon. But I mean, pretty much not every, but pretty much every city and town has a small game shop or has a shop that carries it because someone plays it and is passionate about it.
Yeah.
Support those people. Go out and buy those books from those people, because it really does make a difference as a group who are trying to, as a group who would love to one day play and have that be like their job.
Yeah.
It helps when people support people who play and who are into that kind of stuff. So Amazon is super awesome, but as our Twitch overlords, but support local game shops and then support Amazon. Don't cancel us, Twitch.
Yeah, don't cancel us, please, Amazon. Support your favorite local game store. Also, you folks at your favorite local game store also might be a good place to start playing if you don't have a place to play. Often they run something called Adventurers League, which is like a drop-in place or like kind of like a series of one-shots where you can jump in kind of with any character, and that can be transferable from game to game, or they might even have ongoing campaigns. Some local game stores I know here in Vancouver have like women's only nights, which is really awesome. They have queer friendly nights. Really encourage you to get out and support your favorite local game store, your FLGS, favorite local game store. Okay, Player's Handbook, always good to have around. Two other books that I find really, really helpful for character building are Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Ooh, that's a very pretty cover.
Love that book.
Yeah, it's the limited edition cover. Yeah, our favorite local game store gets limited edition copies for pre-order. So Tim and I always pre-order from our favorite local game stores. Shout out to Strategies. We love you very much. Strategies on Main.
Not the other ones in town, just the one on Main.
No.
Just that one. It's really good. That's their title, Strategies on Main. I really like Xanathar's because it is a really awesome supplemental book to have that has a lot of backstory components in it. If you are someone who has a really hard time coming up with backstory, there are tables where you can just roll a backstory. They will help you walk through everything. And we'll talk a little bit about what to use in here when we get to the component about inspiration and backstory. That one's really good. Also, if you can, Volo's Guide to Monsters is really good to have around as well because it has some supplemental races in it. So if our character happens to be one of the races that are in Volo's, at least we have it around. And
But I would say-
Love
Go ahead.
turtles. That's where they're from.
Yeah.
turtles are great.
I would say the importance is as shown. Like
Yeah.
if you're like limited to how much you want to invest
Yes.
right off the bat, player's handbook, then Xanathars, and then Volos.
And Volos,
Volos,
yeah.
if you want to DM, all three are kind of a must.
Yes.
And then whatever module or whatever you want to run. But
Yeah.
Volos is, I would say, is a must if you want to DM, just because you got all your monster stats.
It's got some fantastic monster. Our list of the basic monster manual is really good. I mean, I could sing praises of like every D&D book.
I mean, Wizards has done such a great job.
So good.
Of putting together the information that you need and that's handy. But those are, I would say, definitely in that order as far as you go in your purchasing.
Absolutely. Xanathars is also really great too because it has extensions on a bunch of different classes and subclasses, or like different subclasses for a lot of the main classes. So Xanathars, definitely a really good one to pick, and it's a bit thinner and it's a bit cheaper, so that one's really good as well. And then you're gonna just need a set of polyhedral dice. A lot of people are like, what are polyhedral dice? It is a set of 7 dice that contain all of the dice that you will need to play a role. Generally, a role-playing game of Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to have your D20, your 20-sided. You're going to have your D12, a D10, and a D100. People often ask, what's the difference between a D10 and a D100? It's not a stupid question. The D10 just has numbers of like 1 to 0, or 1 to 9, and then 0 on it, with 0 being 10. And then the D100 has like 60, 20, 00, and that's like the tens value. So if you're rolling a D100, you roll both together. Had some that come up. Somebody asked, how do I roll? And I was like, this is a great question. And it's not stupid. A lot of people think, oh, is that a stupid question? It's not. You've got your D8, your D6, and your D4. Your D4 is the one that looks like a caltrop and would be so painful if you stepped on it. So don't do that. So you really only need one set. But why would you ever just have one set of dice? I know, like Tim, when he plays Chubb, his character, he only rolls with one set of dice. And I don't understand how he can do that. I have
I
6
had
sets maybe?
I
Nephew?
stopped buying dice when Adam and I went to Emerald City Comic Con.
Yes.
And I wasn't married at the time, but my fiance at the time, I texted her and we were at a booth and I said, I found a set of dice that I would really like, but I need to talk to you before I buy them. And she's like, why? And I was like, well, they're made of comets and they're made from the metal that is harvested from comets from outer space.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dice set was like $750.
Okay.
And I was like, in my mind, I was like, yeah, this is like, I mean, it's made from a comet. Like, what would you expect to pay
this set.
for,
I need this set.
Sky
Yeah.
Metal? And that's where she was like, no. And I haven't really bought many sets of dice since. But it is definitely, if you're the only one, like Em is in a unique situation where both her and Tim play. But if you're the only one in a relationship that plays, they will ask you why you need so many dice. And you will find that there's not really a good reason other than
You need them.
you need them.
Yeah.
Different characters need different dice.
Absolutely.
They just
And
feel right. And then
Tim-
dice boxes, and it's
yes. It's like if you've become a dragon or a goblin with your dice, like the justification is it's just you need them. I play with probably 2 sets strictly for Neppy. I play with the new set that I got from Keisha at Fairy Dragon Dice, which I love and I'm obsessed with. And then I also play with a blue sandstone set that I bought for Neppy.
or
from
the
an Etsy
actual
store.
sandstone.
Yes.
See, I was going into stone dice, and then I heard that they break very easily.
These ones are pretty good. I roll them strictly in a dice tray. I never roll them on a table. They live in their cushy little dice box on their little pillow, and that is where they.
Yeah,
That's
see,
where they live.
I went metal, so I have 3 sets of metal dice,
Yes.
and then I have your sort of standard acrylic dice as well.
Yeah.
But once you go metal, it's really difficult to go back
It's
to
hard to go
acrylic
back.
because
Yeah.
they are very satisfying. And then I have the boulder.
Oh yes, you've got a chunky one.
Yeah, big.
Yeah.
I
time.
haven't made the switch yet. I'm still on the old
I
chestnut
have-
acrylic set.
I bought this the first time and I went to Adam's house to play and I was so excited and I was like, check this out. And I rolled the dice for our D20 and it left pockmarks in his table where the corners hit. It was so big and heavy.
That's so funny.
So, yeah.
You probably weren't allowed to roll that one anymore in there.
I don't know if you've been to Adam's place. They're not super concerned about that table,
true.
but
that's true.
Yeah.
I have one metal dice that Tim bought me that I really, really like. But yeah, I think
dice tangent.
Dice tangent. Whether you have one set per character or whether you just have one set or whether you have like a giant plethora of them, dice are great. Have lots of them. Also support dice makers. Like dice makers are out there doing fantastic work. I know in the like artisan dice community, there's a lot of people out there who are like, why are your dice so expensive? And it's because there's time and effort put into them. They're so beautiful. Like every time I look at Neppy's set, these were a custom set made for my character, and that's how much care your dice maker puts into them. So like they are worth all of the money that you pay for them, even though they're made of resin.
Yeah, and for every pretty dice that you find from like one of the big sellers, I forget what the company is that makes like Chessex. For every pretty one you find like that, I guarantee you'll find a prettier one made by someone on Etsy or selling through Instagram or whatever. There are some really amazing dice makers out there.
Yes.
And it's a terrible wormhole to go down.
It is. It's great. Jen and I both run the Blackwater Instagram, and all of the people that we follow on there are like either D&D creators or dice creators. So I just like, if I need to look at pretty dice, I just scroll through just a bunch of pretty dice. It's so nice. Anyway, dice tangent. You need a set of polyhedrals. An extra set of like a couple extra D6s are really helpful to have as well. Those don't need to be fancy. These ones are fancy. Jen bought me these for Christmas last year, and they have cats and cat's paws on them. So those are my D6s that I use. So we'll start with step 1, which is inspiration. So for the mechanics and narratives to KISS a lot, we have to have the narrative first, kissing, so that the mechanics can fit in with that. A lot of time when I'm going to create a new character, I often think about starting with either a class or a race. Like those are something I've never played before, and build from there. Starting with a class like gives me a sense of what I want my character to be able to do in the long run. If I have a sense of like goals that they may want to do, or kind of like an archetype that they may fill. Starting with race may help you designate where they're from or some aspect of the history, especially if you're in a conversation with your DM about that, or something that may be pertinent to their backstory based on their race or something like that. Another thing I use is good old Google for art. A lot of the time, like as natural storytellers, we as humans can visualize something or get a better sense of the story behind it when we can see a picture of it. So Googling like the race and the class of your character that you want, with a gender assigned to it or not, and the word either like 5e or fantasy next to it can be a really helpful starting guide. Looking at art can give you some inspiration for story as well. Another place to look is pages 61 to 73 of Xanathar's guide. So these pages contain tables that if you wanted to allow you to roll for backstory. Whether you use these as like strict parameters or even just help you get the creative juices flowing, they'll give you a place to start, which I really like. And then pages 175 to 192 contain tables of names. So you can just roll for your character's name. Fun fact, the name Keyleth is actually in this book. So where she got it from or not, I don't know.
Kale was based on a fantasy book, was based on Wheel of Time.
Yes, yeah.
So he was sort of like for those who've read Wheel of Time, was sort of like a smash between Rand and Perrin. So he was like the physique of Perrin. He was like a blacksmith, and he liked to hit things and was very sort of earnest and honest. But he sort of had the Rand backstory of like, raised by someone who wasn't his father, blah, blah, blah. So it was sort of like a meshing of two. So like I found it super useful. Like if you have a character that you like from a fiction or a book, super helpful as a sort of a guide of like who you want them to be.
That was literally my next point as well, is like if you have a character that you've always liked or you want to take inspiration of, do that. Adapt them to the world that your campaign is set in. Rumor out there is, if I'm going to talk about Keyleth from Critical Role, is based very, very loosely off of Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Very loosely. I heard a rumor out there. I don't know if it's true, but that's what
it fits. It fits, it's very, right? It does fit, like Wind Ashari and all that stuff.
Ashari and stuff. So if also if you need names, Fantasy Name Generator is a fantastic site as well. I'm going to plug it again because it helps me so much with anytime I'm DMing something. I always use that for fantasy names. They have like place names, city names, and it's not just limited to fantasy. There's also like sci-fi. It's a deep dive wormhole of names. So please go support it. It's run by like one gal, which is awesome. Shout out to that gal.
I've also found, yes, definitely. I've also found that a great thing for names is things that shouldn't be names.
Oh, yeah.
So like mine was Kale. Cody played Lime. One of my favorite characters in the Adventure Zone Amnesty arc is he plays a guy named Duck Newton.
Oh, I love that.
Is a great name. It doesn't like, it's not something you would ever think to make a name. In the first one, he plays a guy named Taco.
Yes. Taco.
So like just things that shouldn't be names make great fantasy names.
Absolutely. Another place is looking in like old English words, or like Nepentha's name comes from an old Greek word, which I really like. I loved the meaning behind it, and I was like, well, I'm going to just throw an A at the end of it, and that is now her name. But all of like the other priestesses' names from all of the priestesses in her history come from Fantasy Name Generator. I just went like click, 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 click until I found.
Is that including 11. Grape Nub or?
Not including. I didn't name Grape Nub. Sean named Grape Nub.
Fair enough.
So I didn't name her, but it's, it kind of fits the traditional, tiefling naming conventions that we found. So we let it slide. It's great. No, I love Grape Nub. That's awesome. And then, so I know we've got some people. Did you name Grape Nub? I'm pretty sure. I'm getting word that Tim named
I was going to say,
Nub.
I think Tim did, and I didn't want to steal that
Grape Nub feels like a name I would create.
Thank you, Tim. So somebody, I didn't name Grape Nub. Put it that way. Somebody else named Grape Nub. Tim, or like I named Oftish, I named Hade, stuff like that. But no, Tim, and I think Tim started Grape Nub and then Sean ran with it.
Sean definitely embellished Grape Nub.
Yes. Because I think Tim was like, yeah, she's got grape colored skin and nubby horns. And then Sean was like, and then someone was like, oh, Grape Nub. And then that's how it started. So let's talk about it. So I've got character sheet in front of me. Who is this person? Who is this character that we're creating tonight? Chat, if you have any ideas as well, throw them up in there. Would love to. Oh, yeah, I also see someone in the chat talking about Gary Gygax's Extraordinary Book of Names. He put out a book. I think I remember hearing about this.
Sean was talking about it the other week.
Yes,
that he was a big fan of this.
Yes, I think Sean has a copy. So if that's something that you can get your hands on, do that as well. I also saw something the other day where someone was like, yeah, they just smash keys together and then they start grouping words and things and then putting vowels in to make proper word sounds. I was like, I love that. That's great. Come up with some weird and great ways for names. Let's for Yanis and Cody, you and I, and Tim too, if he wants to jump in. And for you out there in the chat, what should be the backstory of this person? Who is this person that we're creating tonight? There's no wrong answers.
I mean, do we want to go with the standard sort of like, orphan, troubled past? I mean, that's
well, you know what?
D&D
I'm gonna
right?
open Xanathars, and I think we're gonna roll for it. I think we'll at least roll to get started. I'm gonna roll one thing in here, and then we're gonna build it from there.
Great starting point.
Right? Give us a bit of inspiration. Okay.
I really want to build a character where that's named Alexander Hamilton, and every single, I just work in as many Hamilton lines as
honestly
possible.
There's nothing stopping you. Yeah,
that's like the whole bit. The whole bit is just there's so much lines in Hamilton with all of the music that it's just like constant Hamilton lines. So
I am going to roll from the life events table in Xanathars, which is on page 69. Nice. In Xanathars. And we'll go from there. So I'm just going to roll on the life and center. I'm rolling a D100, and I rolled a 56. Okay. You spent time working in a job related to your background. So what kind of job did this person have before they started adventuring?
They were the person who I don't know if this exists in Tim's world, but in the olden days they used to have street lights were candles, and at nighttime they had a guy who used to have to go around and light all the candles on the streets. A lamplighter.
Yeah. Okay. So this person was a lamplighter. I'm also seeing some votes in the chat for a spy, a farmer, a fisherman, and then political spy, which I like a lot. What if this person...
Yes, political spy is better than lamplighter.
What if... Well, no. What if this
guy... He gaslights his enemies.
He gaslights his enemies. What about... Okay. This person was a spy, infiltrated this town, but took a job as a lamplighter so he could get close to people, or they could get close to people's houses so that they could start hearing.
He's just like up on a ladder by their window, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Just lighting the lamps.
Just lighting lamps. Okay, so they're a lamplighter, but they're also potentially used to be a spy. Maybe they had to flee. Lamplighter, political spy. I love it. Okay. I'm also gonna roll something else that happened. I'm gonna roll from now. Here's the question: do we want to roll? How about how Plowboy Walker in the chat has basically just said, how about his cover is a lamplighter political spy? I love it. What now? Should I roll from the supernatural events table, or should I roll from the tragedies table, or the weird stuff table?
Weird stuff.
Weird stuff.
Okay. I'm gonna roll from the weird stuff table. I'm gonna roll a D12. So we have our political spy lamplighter who might have had some weird stuff happen to them in their life. I'm going to roll a D12 right now. Okay. Ooh, a 3. Okay. They were enslaved by a hag, a satyr, or some being and lived in that creature's thrall for 1d6 years.
Oh, geez.
Oh, Tim's favorite. It's got to be, what's that thing? What's that thing he likes?
A boggle? Or no, a nilbog.
Nilbog, the thing that you have to worship. It had to spend years worshiping this nilbog.
Okay, so I rolled a d6 for it, and they lived in the thrall of this creature for a year, for 1 year. Okay, so we have our political spy lamplighter who was held captive by a hag or a satyr or some creature and lived in that creature's thrall for 1 year. Okay. This is good. Anything else that we can prep about this wonderful person? Let's see here. I'm looking at the secondary tables. Crime, tragedies. Did something bad happen to them in their life?
I mean, if it's worshiping.
I mean, for a year they were.
Yeah, that's.
I guess. Yeah,
pretty
I guess
bad.
That's
not
pretty bad.
ideal.
Not ideal. It's not perfect. Okay. I think that's
for
a good
year.
enough.
He was part of a cult, essentially.
A one-man cult, it seems.
A one-man cult.
Hey, you don't know if there were other people there. Could have been a whole group of them.
Fair enough.
Might have been. So let's think, okay, so we've got that kind of stuff at this point. Not all characters have to have tragic backstories. Most do, because why would you ever leave your beautiful, wonderful life to go fight dragons for like a year and a half, maybe 2? You just wouldn't. So bad things usually happen to people, and that's what gives them the impetus to start going. But there is always space out there to have a character who just wants to go out and see the world and wants to go grow up and all of that kind of stuff and be a person of the world. So you don't have to have a tragic backstory. You don't have to kill your parents or be an orphan or all that kind of stuff. But most characters start like that. Okay, so what have we got so far?
It makes me think of the Jim Carrey movie, the Yes Man, where he just says yes to everything. Imagine you had a character who was just some self-help guru told him he just needs to say yes more, and some party rolled through town and they're like, we're gonna kill a dragon, are you in? And he's like, yes. And
there's
now
that's a great backstory.
He's like a year and a half in and he's like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Because he just said yes, and there as well as a backstory. Why did he feel the need to say, or why did they feel the need to say yes? Why did they feel the need to go? Why are they still with this party when they could say no at any point? Okay, so we have a very basic backstory for this person: lamplighter, political spy, was in the thrall of a creature for a year and has apparently gotten free of that creature some way, shape, or form. So we should now think about race and class. What kind of when we think about that kind of stuff, you want to kind of build the mechanics of this character based on narrative, and this is like the nuts and
technical difficulties. Sometimes chatWater is like Twitter, and you only get so many words, and Emma's run out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Am I okay?
She hit 139.
She hit her character limit.
I hit it, and that's it. So we probably want to pick a class and race kind of based on narrative in the world. And I'd encourage you to, like, rather than think, like, when you're building your character through your sheet on the sheet, think about stuff that you want your character to do rather than stuff you think your character should be able to do or has to do to be. So, like, you could be a cleric who is like really religious, but maybe not so good at medicine. Maybe they have like a really fantastic tie to their god, but they don't actually know anything about medicine at all. Or maybe you have a fighter that is like not good with a specific type of weapon or is only good with one type of weapon. Like, go based on your story. Don't necessarily go based on what you think you need to do. Your story is what's going to be driving it. And typically when you're writing your narrative, you're going to remember that you're always going to generally be starting at a level 1 character, unless you're going to be coming into a campaign that's a higher level character. So like a level 1 rogue would likely not be an all-star assassin, head of a thieves guild. Let the narrative and the mechanics kiss a little bit. Have your story justify why you're a level 1 character.
Yeah, that's always the best when it's like, yeah, I'm a 50-year-old war veteran who's a level 1 fighter. And it's like, what?
Yeah. So like make it like, whether that's you got injured and you're having to retrain yourself, you can still be a 50-year-old fighter, but maybe you had to relearn to walk after an accident and you're still learning how to fight again or something like that. So like have it so that the narrative justifies the fact that you're starting at level 1. Now, if you're starting at like I think about Blackwater, Neppy started as a level 5 cleric. So like she could already cast Revivify, I think, at that point. And I was already able to cast like level 2 or 3 spells at that point. And I justified that with like, oh, she's been actually training to be a high priestess for years. Like she was titled at 22 and now she's 28 and she's heading out in the world. So she's been doing this for 6 years. So she generally knows a bit of magic and is like doing something. Plowboy Walker just came up with something really awesome in the chat that I really like that I think we should throw in there is they got free because they killed or left their best friend behind to get free from the thrall of this person. I love that. There's some tragedy. I mean, being captured is tragedy enough, but I like that. Let's throw that in there. This is, I think Call Me Pebble has a really good point too, that it's good to say that a level 1 character is quite an imposing figure when compared to like commoners. Mm-hmm. So something to keep in mind as well. And so when we build characters, we want to build them as like we're building their entire life up to the point where they start adventuring. And it's good to do this in order so that you can help recreate the pattern. Something that is helpful as well is if you're not totally comfortable doing this on your own, roll up your character with your DM. Some DMs often have like a session 0 where they do both to like roll characters as like a group, whether that you do that like sit different spots around and so you're not looking at your characters or whatever. And then they often help set up the story at that point, leading up to the proverbial like meet in a jail, a tavern, or a boat scenario, or whatever that is. Talking with your DM about your character on an ongoing basis helps your DM with character arcs in the campaign too. So the more that the DM knows about your backstory, the more that they can throw in those wonderful little juicy narrative bits. I mean, like when we were first starting Blackwater, I talked about Neppy with Tim a lot, which was really nice. And we also had that like beautiful payoff with her, the arc with everything with Velsoom, which tied into Kokanee's backstory. And like that both happened because both Matt and myself were chatting with Tim about backstories, which is great. And you should always do that with your.
I will also say though, what I've done in the past, and one of the most satisfying moments I've had in D&D was with working with Adam on Kale.
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't want Kale's parents to be his real parents. I wanted him to find out that eventually that he was like found and raised by them. But I left completely up to Adam who his real parents were, because it wasn't something my character would know.
Totally.
And also I figured it would be something that as he builds his narrative, he could make relevant to the narrative.
Absolutely.
And the payoff ended up being wonderful, where his parents ended up being plane walkers, and that's why Kale jumps through planes and like realities as much as he does.
Yeah. Your DM's going to have so much insight on, like, maybe if you leave purposeful holes in your story, that can be a really awesome way of, like, say you're stuck on an area of your backstory, tell your DM that, be like, hey, take as many liberties as you want with this bit, or I really would love you to fill in this bit and I don't have to know about it. Your DM is probably going to be really excited to be able to participate with you in that. If you come with like a novel about your character's history, that's wonderful and great. And your DM will likely go through it and try and incorporate as much as they can, but you may not get everything in there. It may not work out exactly. So being flexible and being adaptive with the people that your DM, like what's going on, because there's other people in the campaign too. Another great point coming in from chat is that rolling up a character with your DM helps them get to know the new group. If you're just getting in with the group too, they can think about how your character is going to interact with that group, and they can kind of get the pieces in motion to start that going forward.
And the other thing as well is, like, when you're rolling your backstory, the thing I always find is very, like, to keep in mind is, like, you only know the things you would know as your character. So I know, like, sometimes people get carried away where they're like, oh, and this turned out to be like this, and this turned, like, if your character doesn't know it, don't build that world for the DM. Like, just like if you were to write your own history, like, you wouldn't always be able to speak to the feelings and the thoughts of the people who you interact with, because you don't know. And so, like, leave that the same in your character's backstory, because it allows for the DM to use that a lot more than you telling him that this and this and this happened that wasn't relevant to your character.
Totally. Yeah. Like, because your character lives, like, if you think about your perspective on the world, you may know events and stuff that have happened in this world, or your DM could maybe tell you some of the events that happened depending on who you were, but you don't know everything about everything. You don't know, like, the intricate political schemes going on if you're someone who lives in the countryside, or you were an outlander living in the woods or something like that. You don't know these things. So don't presume knowledge that you don't necessarily know. It actually makes it for more interesting, because you can still get to learn, which is where that beautiful, like, narrative piece comes in as well.
So we got to pick a race and a class.
We do. So we're getting there. Something that is really interesting, that I really like. I was hearing about this the other day, and I think, Cody, you're playing in the campaign that Matt's running right now, that is not streaming. Yeah, right. So Matt is running a campaign for some folks, and I think a couple of the Blackwater folks are playing, where they're just their characters in this kind of pre-campaign arc where they're commoners, where they get something called a defining moment, where they get to use one aspect of a potential class that they could get. And this comes in, like, an act of need and in a moment of desperation. They're able to do something. So, like, say perhaps someone runs up to a fallen party member who's on the verge of death, and in an act of desperation calls out, like, into the void, or like into existence for something. Perhaps, like, a god answers the call, and that puts that person on a path to becoming a cleric. Or perhaps a patron of some kind answers the call and puts that person on a path to becoming a warlock. Or perhaps they're, like, fighting enemies and they see their compatriot get hit, and this sends them into a rage, which unlocks this, like, inner barbarian, this rage that they get to tap into now, which is an awesome DM mechanic that can allow you to play with a couple different things. You get to also form the group together, and, like, you get to move through a bit of that, like, formation part of group dynamics, and it gives almost the group reason to be together, which is really, really nice.
It also solves that sort of, like, awkward situation where you kind of always want certain roles to be filled in a group, but you don't want to have to, like, force people to play characters that they don't want to play. Totally. So it kind of lets everyone slot in where it makes sense in their roles. Yeah, that's a very, very good mechanic.
Yeah. And depending on how much you really dig into the role-playing side of who the character is, if you say had in mind, like, oh, I really want to play a barbarian, but like the example M used, if say someone goes down and you just really need a heal and you're okay, like a little bit flexible on what the class is, it really leads into developing it alongside your backstory perfectly of like, oh, actually he's not a barbarian at all. They're a cleric or, you know, someone who can heal. It's really, it's a beautiful mechanic.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome. When Matt was talking about that, I was like, that is amazing and fantastic. And how have I never heard, pardon me, of that before? So good, so good, so good, so good. So talking with your DM, there's another plug for talking with your DM about when you're doing character building, because maybe they have something built into the game like that, where you get to kind of test out a bunch of, or like have this moment, or like truly narratively find your class, which is really, really nice, especially when you're starting off at a level 1 campaign. And the more you give your DM to work on, the more they'll be able to have those like sweet, sweet narrative storylines to weave into the overarching campaign. Yeah, I think he did. I think Tim is just mentioning that he thinks that Matt created the defining moment mechanic, which I think he did. And I'm surprised that like, that's
TM.
Yeah, he's you know, put
Registered
trademark on it.
trademark
It's
Matthew.
great. Registered trademark Matt 2020. Yeah, great. So there's also a step-by-step guide in the player's handbook about how to create a character, which is awesome. It's on page 11 to 15. If this is like the more the mechanicsy side, which is what we're going to get in at the moment, but starting with the narrative can give you a really nice place to start. Okay, so I have our character sheet in front of me. I would encourage you to do everything in pencil. Have an eraser handy too, because you're going to be erasing stuff as you go through. So I have my handy dandy pencil, I have my handy dandy eraser with me, and here we go. So let's think about race. We can also start with gender. Gender is often a good thing to do. Do we have a preference on gender for this person? No? Okay. Why don't we go with a non-binary person then, which is great as well, because that is an option always. You don't have to pick from a binary gender system. Your person can be an exact representation of who you are. It can be an exact representation of anyone out there in the world. So we're going to go with a non-binary person as well. We'll use they, them pronouns just to keep it gender neutral. So I'm going to write that at the top of my sheet to remember it for myself as well. And then non-binary. Fantastic. Okay, so let's think about race. Do we want to roll for it, or does anyone have a race that they would really like to play, or has not played before, or never rolled up a character before?
I mean, I don't know how technical we want to get, but if they were enthralled by someone, I know that like certain races can't be charmed.
That's true. So
I don't know. It couldn't be like an elf or a half elf.
Yeah,
that would make it kind of hard.
Ooh, Tim is sending me a little note. There is a wonderful table out there called the Reincarnation Table. So you can find them out there. So Reincarnation is a 5th level druid spell, which you can use to bring someone back from the dead, but you bring them back as a different race, which is done by rolling a D100. Yeah, so it's a terrifying spell. Tim loves it.
What if our person was held captive and both them and their friend died, but only they got brought back by a druid?
Okay, I love it.
So now they are a new race and they feel guilty because they survived and their friend did not.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay, so maybe they were rescued from this.
And the druid only had one 5th level spell slot left, could only use it on one of the people, and it was at the end of the
components for and
it was at the end of the
gold
time.
Pieces.
And they reincarnated them and didn't have any left for the friend.
I love it. Okay, so let's roll if we're going to stick with that, then let's roll the reincarnation table.
Just because I want to roll for the reincarnation table.
So I'm going to post the reincarnation table in the chat right now, so that folks can follow along as well. Sorry, mind all of my tabs over here. Oh my gosh, there we go. So there is the reincarnation table. And I'm just going to bring up all of my stuff over here. All right, so let's roll for it. It's a D100. Oh my goodness, gosh. Okay. I rolled. So we don't know what this person was before. Oh, this is the expanded one. So yeah, there's an original one that was truncated and short. This is the expanded one with some of the monstrous races in there as well. We also don't know what this person was before they were this race. They would know, but we can maybe pick that afterwards. Or here's the question. Do we want to roll two? Roll one what they were before and one what they are now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Roll.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I rolled this. Let's say that this first one is what they were before.
Okay.
What they were before they were reincarnated. So I rolled a 22. They were a hill dwarf originally. And I'm going to roll again. And that
It would suck if they rolled a hill dwarf again.
And now they're a mountain dwarf.
And now they're still a hill dwarf. And now that was a 75. So now they're a fire genasi.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's
wild.
What
a transformation. Oh my gosh. Okay. I am going to pull up all of my stuff over here. Oh my gosh, so many tabs. Thank you for bearing with me.
Before they were down to earth, now they're a bit hot-headed.
Now they're a bit, and Tim just brought up a very good point. Perfect for a lamplighter.
For a lamplighter.
Yes.
So question.
yes.
And this is what if the reason that they are use gender neutral pronouns is because there was a switch of gender through the reincarnation?
Fantastic.
What if they were like male before, but they get brought back as a female fire genasi or vice versa?
Yes.
And so they just use they them pronouns because
for the fluidity
neither perfectly describe what they are.
Fantastic. Great. And this is all narrative stuff that we can add in there. This is awesome. You best believe I'm going to be watching this episode back again and writing all of this stuff down in a backstory that I will send out to you folks. So this is great. Awesome. This is working out way better than I thought it was going to. Yeah. Okay. So originally a hill dwarf, now a fire genasi. Whoa. Okay. So we're going to start building the race now. So fire genasi, I believe are in, oh gosh.
That's Xanathar's has genasi?
I'm going to take a look. No. Do you remember what book has genasi in them, Tim?
I think it's in the elemental layer.
It's in the elemental stuff. Well, I'm going to look it up on D&D Beyond.
I think it's also
because some stuff... Doing this live. Guys, we're doing it live. Okay, so I found the genasi on D&D Beyond. And I'm going to find fire genasi. Okay, so I found it, Tim. It's good to go. I think it's in the Elemental Evil Companion book, potentially. I don't think it's in Mordenkainen's. Anyway, so when we're building a genasi, there's going to be like, in every race that you build, there are going to be different things that have to go with it. Input all the important things on your character sheet that come from the race, because technically this is what's starting off your character. You wouldn't necessarily build the hill dwarf and then change it to the fire genasi. I mean, you could, but building the fire genasi, because when characters change races, you lose a lot of your racial abilities from that first race to the second one.
And we're going to assume that they weren't like a level 1 of anything pre-fire genasi.
Yes, absolutely. So fire genasis, looking it up over here. Fire genasi gain a +1 to their intelligence. So generally what I do when I'm filling in stuff on a character sheet is I roll dice last. In typical Blackwater fashion, we are going to leave the dice to the side and only do that at the end. So usually I've got off my character sheet here. I usually put like a little +1 or like whatever the plus bonus is to the racial ability where you get an ability score increase. I put that on the side because I haven't rolled my stats yet because I don't know what class I'm going to be playing at this point. So I'm just going to put it there for later. Fire genasis get dark vision. They also have resistance to fire damage, and they know the produce flame cantrip. Once we reach 3rd level, we can cast Burning Hands as a spell once with this trait per day, and you gain that ability when you regain a long rest. Very cool. So those are Fire Genasi things that we are going to remember for our brand new low Fire Genasi character. Okay. So you'll get basic things from your main race. You're going to get information on ability score, increases age and alignment. Now, something that's really great that D&D Beyond or D&D Wizards of the Coast is doing is removing like standard alignments from specific races. For a long time, like Drow were considered evil, orcs were considered evil, and like if it's a playable race, they can be any alignment. So I think that's a really wonderful thing that has come from a lot of the Black Lives Matter movements, and with respect to like just D&D specifically, is that they've reviewed a lot of that content and removed the like alignment guidelines. So that's fine. And your DM may have specific ideas about alignment and how that influences your campaign, but a lot of the times alignment is just a guideline.
But yeah, and also just to note, like just because you choose to have a race be the villainous race of a campaign, it isn't a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think what they're just trying to get away from is enforcing that certain races have to be bad.
Exactly.
Which for a long time, like people didn't play orcs, or they didn't play races that were typically evil because it didn't make sense for them narratively to be the heroes. And I think they're trying to get away from that, where it's like you can play anything and all races are not prone to an alignment, whether your DM chooses to build the story narrative with them being the villain or not, doesn't mean that it's a racial thing rather than a narrative thing.
Absolutely.
Because I remember seeing a lot of people being like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how are certain modules going to run if, this race is no longer the villain? And it's like, that race can be the villain, but it doesn't mean that they have to be. And
exactly.
I think that's what they're trying to get to.
They're not like pigeonholed into that.
Exactly.
Or assumed to be that. Genasi can also read and write Common and Primordial. Their general ability score for Constitution increases by a +2. They mature about the same rate as humans and reach adulthood in their late teens. They live somewhat longer than humans do, up to about 120 years. They're considered medium, and their base walking speed is 30 feet. So all of those kind of little things you're going to want to make sure you write somewhere on your character sheet.
I want to picture it in my mind. Are they always on fire? Are they like the Human Torch in Fantastic Four? Or are they just like do they have like flames on them constantly?
Well, let me read the description of a Fire Genasi for you. As a Fire Genasi, you have inherited the volatile mood and keen mind of the Ifrit. You tend toward impatience and make snap judgments. Rather than hide your distinctive appearance, you exult in it. Nearly all Fire Genasi are feverishly hot, as if burning inside, an impression reinforced by the flaming red, coal black, or ash gray skin tones. The more human-looking have fiery red hair that writhes under extreme emotion, while more exotic folks sport actual flames dancing on their heads. Fire Genasi voices might sound like crackling flames. Their eyes flare when angered. Some are accompanied by the faint scent of brimstone.
So they're basically like a red version of Hades from Hercules.
Yeah, they're like low walking torches.
Because
that's
like
awesome.
Hades with the blue fire hair, but they got red.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
so that
great.
is our sweet little Fire Genasi that we are dealing with now. So some races have sub races. So say we were just deciding to pick you'd want to play a Genasi right off the top. You would pick Genasi as kind of the base race, and then you would use Fire Genasi as your sub race. And the sub races generally have extra bonuses and abilities that to consider as well, just like this Fire Genasi does. Okay, cool. So that is our Fire Genasi as the race. Now we need to pick background. Well, this generally comes from the narrative that we've already built. And you use the story so far to help you pick a background. So you're going to want to go over to the player's handbook, and located on page 125 to 141 are the backgrounds. So I'm going to flip that open in here. Dun, dun, dun. So
Yeah, could be spy, could be haunted one.
yes, those are both very good ones. Spy is not in this one, not in the player's handbook, if I remember right. It might be on D&D Beyond. That might be a good one. I'll take a look. I'm going to look it up right now. Spy background 5E, the criminal or the spy. There we go. We'll use the criminal one. So maybe this person was the criminal that we have already, or the spy that we've already, and now they're posing as a lamplighter. Maybe afterwards, we'll kind of flesh that out afterwards. So your background is going to kind of give you these things that you'll see personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws in there too. Those are also just guidelines to help you get started with fleshing out who this person is if you're not sure what their characteristics are like at this point. And these can also drive home a lot of those dynamic character goals that we talked about last session, where you're wanting to build for a character for role play that has the ability to change so far. This may be where your character starts, but not necessarily where they end up. So let's roll for their personality. So maybe as they've become this fire genasi, they've gone through a complete personality change. They're feeling very different.
I do also want to add though, like you can see as we're building this character that like you start to get an idea, you start to get ideas of like, at least I do, of like what it could be and like how it could fit. If you get to a point, like you get to this stage and you're like, I have a really good idea of something I want to play. You don't have to continue. Like we're building through all the steps here. But like, if you get to this point, you're like, oh, I know I like my mind is running with ideas and like what it could possibly be like, and that's informed a character for you. You don't need to go through the next steps. Absolutely. Like you can fill that in based on what you would like. You don't have to roll for it. Totally. We're going to roll for it just because I've never rolled a character completely. I've usually stopped partway through. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to turn out.
Also, Sean made me promise that we would roll for as many things as possible.
Because he's a god of chaos.
Because he is he's the Lord of Chaos. And that's how things work in this world. So I'm going to roll a D8 for their personality trait. And generally when you roll personality traits, you roll twice. I'm going to roll twice.
He looks like Thor, but he really is a Loki.
100%. Sean has big Loki energy. Okay, so I rolled a 6. So under the criminal background, which is the one we're going for, I don't pay attention to risks in a situation. Never tell me the odds. So this person doesn't give a hoot about the risks. And also
keeping it PG.
I think this is also very in line with their fire genasi heritage. They blow up at the slightest insult. So that seems to fit. Okay. Now their ideals. I'm going to roll. Okay, go ahead, Giannis.
Do we want to, just for curiosity's sake, roll some personality things of what they were before as a juxtaposition?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because if they like, I'm just thinking if they are hot-headed now, like maybe they weren't before. I mean, we'll see what the dice tells, but.
Okay, so I always have a plan to do for a plan for what. Wow, I always have a plan for what to do when things go wrong. So this person who now doesn't give a hoot about the risks was before the person who was always like, I have a plan for everything. Good. All right. And I am always calm no matter what the situation. I never raise my voice or let my emotions control me. I love dice rolling.
It's so perfect.
It's so perfect. This is the narrative mechanics kissing.
It's amazing.
So this person originally, before they were reincarnated as a fire genasi, seemed calm, resolute, had a plan for everything. And now they don't care about risks and they blow up at insults. I love it. This is great. Okay. So let's roll their ideal, which is kind of like the thing that they ascribe to. All right. That is, so we'll roll for what they had first. And that's redemption. There's a spark of good in everyone. So that's what they were before. And I'm going to roll it again. And okay. The next one is charity. I steal from the wealthy so that I can help people in need. So maybe our criminal has a heart. Our criminal fire genasi has a heart after all. Okay.
Sort of playing into that survivor's guilt, sort of like, charitable helping.
Yes, charitable helping. I love it. Okay, now I am going to roll a bond. So I'll roll what it was before. Oh, someone I love died because of a mistake I made. That will never happen again.
That'll do it.
Yep. I don't think we should even change. I don't even think we should change that. I think we should just leave that as it is.
Yeah, I think that's one and only.
One and only. I love when the dice roll kissing. Okay. And now I'm going to roll a flaw. An innocent person is an innocent person is in prison for a crime that I committed, and I'm okay with that. Ooh, maybe this is something from their spy days or their espionage days. Maybe they framed somebody else for something that they did. I like it. This is good. This is good.
I love the addition of, and I'm okay with that.
And I'm okay with it. That's their flaw.
Don't lose sleep.
Yeah, like I think of Neppy's flaws is that she, like, in the beginning, she held grudges. She was like, if you lose my trust, that's it. Like, we're done. If you don't walk the line that I do, that's it. But she's not like that anymore. She changed. Dynamic character
growing.
It's good. Growing. It's great. Okay, so that's our background, and background is also going to give you things like skill proficiencies. It's also going to give you a tool proficiency general, or some tool proficiency potentially, or an extra language depending on your background, and it also give you a set of equipment. So our criminal fire genasi comes equipped. They are proficient in deception and stealth right away, which is great. They're proficient with a gaming set, so that could be like cards or dice or something along those lines. And then they also are proficient with thieves' tools. I'm gonna write that down. And they also come with equipment. So they have in their possession a crowbar, a set of dark common clothes, including a hood, and a pouch containing 15 gold pieces. So when you get to equipment, talk with your DM about what your character might have. But generally, if you were kind of just starting out, rules as written, this is what a criminal would come around with. And their criminal specialty, you can roll that as well. But we've already decided that this person is a spy. So that is their espionage is their specialty.
I will say, don't make the mistake I did where you're like, assume that equipment will be sort of like, yeah, everyone starts with the same, like actually put it down, because you will eventually get to a point where the DM's like, well, do you have rope in your inventory? And you're like, well, of course I would. I mean, everyone starts with rope. And you're like, well, do you have it in your inventory? And you're like, oh, well, I guess I didn't write it down in like session 1.
Right.
So write it all down. I guess
you don't have rope. Sorry.
Guess you don't have rope then.
Unless you can show the DM, like right here, it says I have rope, you're going to be out of luck.
A lot of like on D&D Beyond, if you say that you have an explorer's pack or a dungeoneering pack, like that will just populate your inventory for you. But if you're wondering what's actually in those things, the player's handbook has a guide to all of that, what is in that online and then also in here. So great. So that is background. Next, class.
I feel like it's really informed the class already. I mean,
tell me, what are your thoughts?
It feels like a rogue.
Feels like a rogue. Cody, what do you think?
It feels like a rogue.
Yeah, rogue would make sense. There's other, if we're going off of stealth, like, is their main thing, we have options in the monk class.
Ooh.
There is Way of the Shadow, which that one is also very like very narrative heavy, and you can kind of like move through. If there's a dark area, they allow you to kind of like do a little teleporting through the shadows. That's interesting.
Nice. Cool.
You could be.
And monk kind of does play into the whole, like, if someone brought them back, then they would join like a cult, like, well, not a cult, but like a monastery or something where they get trained. Like, so that plays into that sort of like, why would someone bring you back?
Right. Plowboy Walker in the chat just brought up a really good point that there could be a potential of a monk to keep their hot-headedness in check. A rogue monk at some point, with like, if you decided to multi-class, would be a pretty interesting option.
I have two things. The idea of a monk with like the specific like role play of like trying to control your hot-headedness but not being able to is wonderful.
I love that.
I really like that. And then also the rogue monk combination, I'll never be able to get it out of my head. I played in a campaign where someone played a rogue monk combo and built a Beverly Hills Ninja character that was
it
was just the most wonderful thing. He was just this big, loud, but also incredibly stealthy martial arts. It was
I love
wonderful.
that. That's so
But
great.
I love the idea of a monk who's failing at being a monk because they're so hot-headed.
I love that. That's great. Well, then let's build a monk. Cody, what do you think?
Yeah.
See, I told you Cody was better at this.
Well, I got to think our chat is doing fantastic right now at helping with these. So thank you so much. Very much appreciate your input. So we're going to build a monk.
I like this chat participation thing. We might have to do another session where we do something with them.
I think it's great in chatwater too, because there's just the three of us. And we're actually able to kind of keep on track with it.
And we don't have to end on a cliff like Tim does. Otherwise, Tim dies if he doesn't end on a cliff. I don't know if people know this.
That's how he lives. He is.
It sustains him.
Yeah.
The misery fuels.
The misery of us having to wait another. He's snickering.
He gets younger every stream.
Honestly,
it's true.
His wrinkles are starting to
disappear. He's like 170 years old now, but you'd never know it.
You'd never know. No, I've known him for too long. You won't. So yeah, I think Tim sucks that energy out of everything by our reactions at the end of it. And I know that it's leaving us on a cliffhanger.
It's an energy vampire.
He's a cliff lich. That's how it is.
Lich.
So good. Okay, so let's build a monk. Building a class, your class is the meaty part. You're gonna have, as we have obviously gone through, you're gonna have a really good sense of who your character is at this point. This is when we start sending messages to each other.
Sorry, who's that directed to, Yannick?
That was directed to Tim.
Got it. As the new one, I have to ask.
Yes. So what I would really encourage you folks to do is I'd encourage you to actually, once you've picked your class, read through it in the player's handbook over and over and over again. Read through it, because the mechanics are the thing that are going to be the influence your gameplay, a lot. The narrative will obviously influence your gameplay, the role play and those intercharacter and relating with NPCs and stuff like that. But when you're needing to make roles, when you're trying to do things, the mechanics are what's going to be driving that. So It's really good to know what your character can do, what you're good at, what you're not good at.
And this is what I was talking about before when we were discussing role playing. Was I found the biggest thing for me was if I took all the mechanics stuff off my mind, it made it so much easier to role play. And the only way I could do that was to really get to know how my character mechanics work in and out, because then I wouldn't need to stress about it.
Totally.
Then I could just focus on who is my character? What would he do? And I wouldn't need to worry about would he hit with a sword or would he cast a spell? That stuff already thought about. Now I can just engage in the moment.
It becomes more intrinsic. And I call it the 4 C's: connection, competency, comfort, and confidence. Those are the 4 things that I think make a D&D player great. Is their connection to their character? How well do they know them as a person? Competency. Are they able to recall the things that their character can do? That's the more mechanicsy driven thing. Comfort, that sense of being able to be vulnerable and being emotionally connected to the people that you're working with, and confidence, being able to do this on a regular, consistent basis where you're able to bring it every game. And even if you're having an off day, that the space can still be something for you that allows you to step out of that shell and be this person in the moment. So the 4 C's. That's what I would go for.
It's a bit of a tangent, but it's I know that part of the reason that it takes George R.R. Martin so long to write his books is because he's a writer that he puts his characters into situations and then he organically sees what that they would do based on based on what has been formed in the past. And that's basically what D&D is. And so you want to be so familiar in your character that you can really just let it flow in the moment.
Totally.
And that only comes by knowing the sort of groundwork that goes behind it.
When you know the mechanics of your character, you don't break immersion as many times. You're allowed to actually be in your character and have a sense of flow with them. So you don't have to be and I'm going to go do, and I'm going to talk to this person and then you're fumbling through trying to figure out what your role is.
And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean like pressure go memorize the rule book and like know everything. I'm just like, you only need to focus on your character, your class, your level. Yeah. And when you're level 1, that's like very, very little information.
Yeah. Don't worry about what your character can do at level 14 if you're only a level 1 character.
Or what other characters can do.
Yeah. Just know yours. That's super fine. That's great. You come to the table knowing what your character can do. Super helpful for your fellow players. Super helpful for your DM.
Yeah, your DM will love you.
Yes. What else do I encourage you to do? If you have questions about your class and you have questions about like how to make the narrative and mechanics kiss for your character, talk to your DM outside of session. Be like, hey, can we, schedule a time to chat, whether that's over the phone or I guess now in the days over Zoom or, socially distance or something like that. Talk to your DM about your character. They are likely going to have input on maybe the narrative components, but they'll also be able to discuss with you mechanics. If there's something you want to work in or something you have questions about, they'll hopefully be able to answer you. And if not, the internet is a really good place to come with some ideas.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it, and I know the rest of the group might not like it and I'll deal with it. But like, if you have a question, I mean, we have a great show on Wednesday nights where you can send your questions, whether it be from your character. I mean, even your show. If your character has a question and it's not 100%. In our world, you can still write to the 3 lovely ladies who will be running Wednesday's show. But you can also just message us on Blackwater, the Instagram, and I'm sure one of us would love to get back to you about like ideas or whatever. If you have any character issues, like ask us.
Happy to help.
We don't have hundreds of thousands of viewers yet. And so it's very manageable at this point. If you're watching this in like 2025 and we have millions of subscribers, ignore all of this. But right now,
please don't contact us.
Please don't contact us. We're way too important and we're way too busy. But right now we're not. So please message us.
Please. We love that. We love interacting with our community. It's been really great. And I know that, like I've said this in the past, but I know that some of our viewers and like our fans and our community have connected together to start their own games, which is like the most wonderful thing. So if you're like someone who is brand new to D&D and want to connect with a whole bunch of other people who are new to D&D and also some veteran players, our community is a really great place to do that. So thank y'all who are out there. So generally when people start building class, they're like, yeah, I'm going to start rolling for stuff. If you haven't already been rolling, don't worry about this is me over here.
We don't roll dice.
We don't roll dice right now. Just everyone chill out about your dice.
Roll dice first so many times.
I usually roll dice before I even pick my character.
Yeah, I am a firm proponent of the fact that rolling dice is last. Like, let's get the narrative in place. Let's get all of your abilities on your sheet and then roll dice last.
You mean you guys don't just put 18 down in every single box?
I mean, I try, but then Tim tells me no. So, so there is a table at the beginning of every class page that gives you a really handy dandy guide on what your character will be able to do at all of the levels. Monks are really awesome because they fists are weapons, and it's really great. I love monks so much. And they also get something called key points, which they can they can spend to do specific abilities. And when you read the monk class, that is what you'll be able to get into. And we're not going to be here to be able to tutor you on everything monk, because I'm still learning a monk myself. But this is a really great to set up a level, a character. And what I'm hoping to do is be able to give you a pattern to set up things, but we're just going to use a monk as an example.
The wonderful thing about monks is that they seem, when you read the book, to be like not as good as the other classes, but in fact they're like almost so better than everything else.
So powerful.
They're so powerful. Good. Level 2, when you get the key points, you just do anything. What do you want to do? Just do it.
So right at the top of the class features, it will tell you about hit points. I want you to put that aside. I want you to just like lock it down.
That involves rolling dice.
That involves rolling dice. We're not going to do that yet. So we're going to put the hit points to the side. And then we're going to start at our proficiencies. So you're going to get, so you do not wear armor. As a monk, you don't wear armor. But you will want to look at, can your character wear armor? What type of armor is there? Only like druids can't wear metal. They can only wear leathers or hide armor or stuff like that. What kind of weapons can you use? Monks can use simple weapons or short swords, and tools. They are able to choose one type of artisan tools or a musical instrument. So able to like figure out what your character can do with those things. Yeah.
There are rare occasions where your class won't allow something and your race will. In those cases, I would usually you can pick the will, but in those cases, I would talk to your DM and see what they would advise. Maybe you're racially you can, but you choose not to because you're a druid, or because like for the druids, it might be like a religious thing or a natural thing to not wear anything metal, or so just, or there's a way you can work around it. Cause I know like you can have an armor that's like plate, but not made of metal. Like there's talk to your DM, but there are sometimes class and racial things that kind of bash a little bit.
Yeah. When they don't kiss.
When they don't kiss. But you can make them kiss.
Make them kiss.
Well, you can ask them to kiss. We don't make anyone kiss.
No, we don't.
You can ask them to kiss, but talk to your DM about it.
Like I'm thinking, for example, like plate armor that's made of dragon scales. That's natural.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So there
more
are
communication you have with your DM, the better.
More
exactly. But there are going to be times where your race allows you to have a proficiency or do something, but your class is kind of against it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that allows you to almost build better characters or stronger like characters, but use the narrative to inform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe our hill dwarf now fire genasi, maybe wasn't a monk before, but now maybe their instinct is to go for the sword. But now they've been, trying to train to keep their hot-headedness in check. And now they're, being taught to fight with their fists as a way of like paying penance or something along those lines. Chat, keep going with these awesome suggestions. We love them. Please put them up in there because I will be rewatching this episode probably 2 or 3 times to write all of this stuff down. So if you have any more suggestions about our wonderful hill dwarf turned fire genasi, who now is a lamplighter but used to be a spy and was captured by a creature of some kind, I'm going to leave that one up to Tim's discretion because I trust him as a DM.
Is it now a lamplighter used to be a spy, or are they a spy lamplighter currently?
I figured lamplighter is the cover, yeah?
The lamplighter is the cover. Right,
but they're currently a spy.
They're currently a spy. And are as
good
covering
excuse
as a lamplighter.
To be out at night, and it's not like suspicious because your job is to be there.
This is very true. I love it. This is great. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to fill in your saving throws. So every class is proficient in 2 saving throws. So for monks, it is strength and dexterity. So I'm just going to bubble those in. Still haven't rolled any dice. There are no numbers on my sheet yet.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And it's something it's one of those moments where you're like, I don't know how to do this and it's too late to ask.
Yeah.
But what is expertise?
Great question. Expertise.
There's proficiency and then there's expertise, and people talk about it and I don't know what it is, and I've always been too scared to ask. Expertise
is when you double your proficiency bonus. So every level comes with a proficiency bonus. So if
you have a racial and a class, like if you have a racial and a class proficiency overlap, then you would have expertise?
Not necessarily, no. Only a couple classes get expertise. I believe bards get expertise and also rogues get expertise. So it means that at some point during a leveling up, you're able to double your proficiency bonus on a couple abilities. Okay. So say if your background as being our character's background being a criminal gives them stealth, you can't just take stealth again to get proficiency with it. Like of the skills that you can choose, pick another 2 to diversify your character.
It doesn't gain you anything to stack proficiency.
No.
But expertise is a stacking, but that's a class feature.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's right. So that's a great question about proficiency bonus. So every level comes with a proficiency bonus. So for generally up to level 4, it's a +2. Up to level 8, it's a +3. 11, 12, it's a +4. Up to 16, it's a +5. And then 20, up to 20, it's a +6. So at level 1, our proficiency bonus is +2. So when something you have that little like bubbled in, when you are proficient in something, that means you not only get to add the modifier from the stat that it gives you. So say like there will be a modifier that will go with the dexterity score that we're going to roll in a couple minutes. But I get to add my proficiency score to that. So I'm a little bit better in these 2 things. So I'm a little bit better at strength saving throws, like not being knocked prone, or dexterity saving throws, dodging out of the way or something. So proficiency allows you to be a little bit better at something, and that increases as you get more skillful, which makes sense. And then skills. So there are a list of skills: acrobatics, animal handling, arcana, athletics, deception, history, insight, intimidation, investigation, medicine, nature, perception, performance, persuasion, religion, sleight of hand, stealth, and survival. That all have modifiers that go with them. So your class will give you options about which things that you can choose. So you get to, as a monk, you get to choose 2 from acrobatics, athletics, history, insight, religion, and stealth. Since we already have stealth, since we've got our criminal background, we're not going to choose that, but we're going to choose 2 other ones. Any thoughts on what we should choose? Chat and Yanis and Cody.
See, now generally I would choose the one that would benefit me most as a monk, but maybe we should choose one that's more narratively satisfying.
Yeah, why not? So let's think with our backstory. What kind of things would you think this person would be good at?
I mean, if they're training as a monk, I would hope that they'd be good at acrobatics.
Acrobatics, great. Let's put that in there. And then we get to pick one more. I wonder too if maybe this could be something that we could pick something that might not be the most helpful to the monk class potentially, but also could be something that's like a remnant from their previous life.
I picked the first one, but what if they're good at animal handling?
Ooh.
From a previous one, but people don't expect it because they're literally on fire. So I love it. Why would the horse be okay with you? Because your hair is literally flames, and then the horse is chill.
Right. And so animal handling isn't something that a monk would necessarily be good at. So in this moment, if you have something that is narratively a little bit different than what the class is doing, then you turn to your DM and I go, Tim, what do you think about having our Fire Genasi monk be good at animal handling because it might be from their past existence? And I'm getting a big thumbs up. So we're going to put that in there as animal handling. Great.
Also, I wanted to just share this quickly, just in case people don't know, and I feel like most people would. But the best way I've found to know what strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma are.
I have that coming up.
Oh, okay. I'll ignore me then.
It's coming. No, but I want you to share it, but in a minute, because we're not there yet, because we're not rolling stats yet.
Is it tomatoes?
Yes, it's tomatoes. It's
tomatoes is the best one.
Yeah.
That's how I learned.
So all of those wonderful skills, there are definitions of what the skills are online. So there is, if you're not sure what any of them are, go take a look. There's some really good descriptions about what you can be able to do. Like the difference between athletics and acrobatics is acrobatics is being able to parkour up something. Athletics is muscling your way up something. So I always think of acrobatics as being skill and athletics being strength, which is reflected in the dexterity and strength abilities.
Think 100-meter dash versus US gymnast.
Yes, exactly. Or weightlifting versus a gymnast as well. Yeah. So those are your skills. You'll then want to talk about your equipment. The book, the player's handbook will often give you a list of equipment that you can have equipped with you or what you're proficient in. But talk to your DM if there's any extra equipment or weapons or anything like that you start out with. Now, abilities. Each class is going to have specific abilities that go along with it. Monks, for example, get something called unarmored defense. So while they're wearing no armor and not using a shield, you get an AC equal to 10 plus dex plus wisdom, which is really, really great. But because we haven't rolled any dice yet, we don't know what those numbers are. But I'm going to write a little note for myself that it's 10 plus dex plus wisdom, so that when we do end up rolling numbers, that's what I can put in there. Yes.
I hate to derail this, but Sean's not here, so I have to.
Please derail.
Someone
it wouldn't be chatwater if we didn't fully get there.
Exactly. Someone in the chat made a great point, and I feel like we should retcon this.
Okay.
Maybe instead of being good at acrobatics, they should be good at intimidation.
Ooh.
And their logic was that they're a bit hot-headed and that they do have the flame hair. And I feel like that's such a great sort of character thing where if they lose their temper and their hair flares, it would be a very intimidating thing.
Absolutely. I love it.
I feel like it's a better fit than acrobatics, which is just sort of your logical fit for a monk.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. Or you mean instead of animal handling?
No, I like the animal handling
one.
I just mean I'm trying to build something that's not truly informed by my desire to build a strong character.
I love it. That's great. Perfect. Maybe they also got their love of animal handling from the druids that reincarnated them.
I always min-max the class characters. Just like, it's gotta be perfect.
I know.
I
this
build
is an
these
active,
beautiful. Yeah, I
an
build the
active thing
role play
against it.
thing that's very like not min max, but I do love to min max the mechanics.
Yeah. And like this is not a throwdown against min maxing. This is like an alternative
No, I will
way
continue
to
to do it.
You can't stop
me. I will
me.
do this. You cannot stop me.
If this character is broken, it's Tim's problem.
It's Tim's problem,
not mine. So
he's nodding. He's just nodding in the corner. Yeah. Okay. So we have animal handling, deception, intimidation, and stealth. Okay. Our monk is looking pretty great so far. Yeah, your abilities. So at a monk, you get unarmored defense, which I have noted down here. They get martial arts, which is a really awesome thing. You get to use dexterity instead of strength. You can roll a d4 in place of normal damage. And literally all of this I'm just reading from the player's handbook too. And that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to look at everything that is in accordance to the level that your character is starting at. Say you start at level 2. Then fantastic. Make sure that you have access to all of the level 2 stuff for your character. You're going to want to make sure that you are familiar with those things. Don't worry too much about what's going to happen. Maybe look at stuff that comes up about level 3, especially if you're going to be, there is like a subclass that your character is going to do. Have a vague idea maybe about where you want it to go, but also leave that open and a little bit flexible to what might happen, because there might be narrative moments in the campaign that like really influence that. So leave yourself open. Have a vague idea, but leave yourself open. So really just at this level, we get unarmored defense and martial arts.
And I will say, when you're reading all of these like different things, like, gets a plus to this and uses this dexterity instead of strength. Like when you're reading all of these things, it might seem like a lot to remember, but that's where you sort of write, like M is doing, the little plus this, plus that into your chart, so that you don't need to be able to rattle that off the top of your head when you're in a session, because you've got it all represented on your page where you can find it. So it does seem like, I remember when I first started playing, I was like, how am I going to remember that, you roll this for this and this, but once you have it on the sheet, it does flow quite nicely. So don't.
Yeah. It's great.
Maybe so no one stresses as much as I did when I played my first session, but I'm like really sort of like, everyone don't stress. Like it's
building the
easy.
character was extremely stressful, and like, how am I going to remember all this stuff, especially, and it, cause my first character I built was a sorcerer, and that's like,
sorcerers
it feels
are hard.
it feels like a lot. I probably shouldn't have done that, but thankfully our DM was a little more experienced than I was. And so I created my character with him, and during playing was very understanding when I didn't know something. They did.
And this is also something that you'll see, like, it happens a lot on Critical Role where you see them play live. Our group doesn't do it as much just because it's like instinctual. But Matt will a lot of time be like, this character's up next and then you're on deck. And like always be like thinking like when you're in initiative and you're playing in combat, always be thinking like, what am I going to do when it gets to my turn?
Yeah. So
that you're not sort of surprised by when it comes to you. Our group sort of just does it naturally.
Because we've all been playing with each other for 2.5 years.
Exactly.
In these roles specifically.
It's very easy to forget. So just remember, like, for instance, I come after Cody. So when Cody's turn is, I start thinking about what I'm going to do. And then of course my turn is informed by what Cody chooses to do, but then at least I have an idea or have a starting point to go from.
Totally.
But it's D&D's, it's chill.
It's a game. It's a game. Chill. Also, at the end of the day, it's a game. It's a game that you play with your friends. When something that is like, so if you do get to that like level 3 or level 2, some characters get it at level 2, some get it at level 3. It's the subclass that helps define more of what your character can do when they get more powerful. And if you don't know what that is yet, you don't have to. The narrative can inform that as well. One of the big things you may want to consider, though, is spell casting. If your character is a caster, magic is going to be essential to your entire character, and each casting class has different mechanics about how spells are used. So read up on your class and check in with your DM if you're unsure about how something works. Some are prepared casters, like paladins and clerics and druids who can prepare different spells every day and have access to all the spells of their class. Some have learned spells like wizards. Some are half casters like paladins and rangers and eldritch knights and arcane tricksters and arcane trickster rogues. Some have different number of spell slots like warlocks. Some have different ways they can manipulate magic like sorcerers, and on and so forth.
Magic is very fun.
Meta magic is so fun, but it's complicated. It took me a long time to learn the warlock spellcasting system. I was just like, this makes no sense to me. And then I had
People
to
say
learn
it's the easiest, but that one confused me the most.
It's hard.
I have steered clear of it because I've seen people super experienced with Dungeons and Dragons be like confused by it. So I've like literally just been like, no, thank you. If they can't figure it out, there's no way I'm going to keep track of it.
But and like, or there will be a lot of stuff out there too about people will be like, oh, this is too hard. Oh, this is too hard. Pick something easy. It all comes down to your commitment to it. And like, you can learn a class. Like these are basic rules for the player's handbook. You don't have to be a veteran player to learn this stuff and ask questions. Like there are other people out there who really, really want to help. Like Reddit is also a fantastic place to get assistance. Reddit can also have some deep, dark, twisty corners to it. So like, be careful. But like Reddit can be a fantastic place to that. Or come on our chat stream and talk about your class because people are going to be around to talk about it.
Another great thing is when you do play a character from level 1 up, by the time you get to level 2, you figured out the level 1 stuff.
Yeah. So
and then you have all that time to figure out the level 2 stuff. And also, when your character becomes level 2, he's not, all knowing about his new abilities. No. It also takes him time to figure it out. So
Absolutely.
like when you play a character, it gives you time to figure stuff out before you move on to the next.
100%.
So don't get ahead of yourself being like, oh, there's so much stuff. Level 1 characters don't have that much stuff. And by the time you have that under your hat, level 2 will introduce a little bit more. So it comes in steps.
Yes.
I will say
level 1 of any class it's very digestible.
Pretty simple.
And I will say when you get to level 3 and you start like sorcerers have sorcerer points and monks have key points. And all these things, I know it seems really like a lot. And when I started playing a sorcerer, I was like, there's so many points and they can do so many things. And if your character doesn't do the thing, it doesn't do the thing. Like, it's okay to not use them. It's okay to forget about them. It's okay to just punch instead of doing like a special kind of punch. Like, it's not a big deal.
And if someone tells you otherwise, let them know that you're playing your character in your way, because this is your character and you're the only person who can play your character like you can.
All
There's
right.
nobody else out there who can do that for you.
We got to keep tracking. We got to finish this character.
We're finishing this character. So a little bit more on magic stuff. There is a way to have magic be narratively informed. Look at the list of available spells out there. Player's Handbook and Xanathar's are the two big ones as of right now. There's some other spells out there in like Elemental Evil and stuff like that, depending on where you get your material from. I'd encourage you to think about what kind of person your character is and what would make sense for them to cast. Generally, each casting class has access to a certain like spell list, but definitely useful to take spells that are handy to have for your class. But why would a wizard take knock if they have a rogue in the party? So try and have your magic be narratively informed. Like there are some spells that Neppy could take that she just doesn't take. Like spells can also become kind of like your character's calling card. I think in our party, like Yana using negative energy flood, that's a very Yana spell. Like big necrotic energy, big necro mama spell. Letters using booming blade on his hordes or create bonfire. That's things that are inherently letters. Finnan's biting shadow, Kokanee's ice bayonet or heavenly bullet, Neppy using life transference. Like I built life transference in as when I saw that spell, I was like, ooh, that is a narrative piece. Like for people who are not part of Philenis to be able to enter, I have to cast life transference on them to give them some of my like life essence so that they can be not considered outsiders. And that's the only way they'd be allowed in. That was a mechanic that I built in like to Neppy's character in conversation with Tim, and he was like, yeah, that sounds great. So for me, life transference is a very special spell for her. And there's also like with life transference, I've had it so that I could take, like Neppy took Jar's scars by use of life transference. So like I manipulated life transference, not necessarily to heal her, but to take the scars off of her body and give them to Neppy. So that was a way, like the narrative and the mechanics can still kiss, even around something as technical as spellcasting. Okay, so now that we've got all of that stuff out of the way, for our monk does not have any spells, they have key points and all this kind of stuff. Pretty simple build so far. Now we can start the dice rolling.
Oh, thank God.
Right? So we're doing pretty great so far. I know. Now all of you are excited.
And I just went.
Now we can start rolling dice. So first we're going to do stats. Really important that what your stats can do. And one of the best ways to conceptualize them is through tomatoes. Go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, it's a tomato rule. Generally, people get confused, not so much with like strength, but like some of the intelligence, wisdom, charisma, like what exactly do they mean? This is the way that it was explained to me by Adam. But I think it's a pretty standard way. It's the tomato way. Strength is being able to crush a tomato.
Yes.
Dexterity is being able to dodge a tomato. Constitution is being able to eat a bad tomato and not get sick. Intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit, while wisdom is knowing that a tomato does not belong in a fruit salad.
Yes.
And charisma is being able to sell a tomato-based fruit salad.
Which is great. I love that. It's my favorite thing. I think it's awesome.
Another one I've heard explains it.
Another one I've heard is being able to convince someone that ketchup and salsa are the same thing. Which I also really think is very funny.
That tickles my brain in all the right ways.
You have to be very, very talented
to convince someone that ketchup and salsa are the same thing.
My favorite one is the fact that ketchup, ingredient-wise, is just a smoothie.
Oh, I hate that.
Because tomatoes are fruit,
ketchup
and
it's
jam. Got so much sugar. It's just a tomato smoothie.
Oh, we could get stuck right there, but we're moving on because we're rolling dice now. So there are a lot of ways that stats can be done.
Ketchup is jam.
Okay, we're moving forward. Some DMs like a point buy system where they give you a specific number of points that you can divvy across the 6 stats. But I personally like the 46 method. And so that's what we're going to do here. Check in with your DM about what they want you to do. Some DMs will be super okay if you roll this yourself at home. Some DMs will want you to roll it in person with them. Talk to your DM about what they want or what feels comfortable for you as well, and kind of have that conversation get started. So when you're rolling stats, the way the 4d6 system works is you're going to roll 4d6. So I'm going to take my handy dandy d6 here. Actually, Yanis, do you have dice with you?
I do.
Do you have 4d6 with you?
I do.
Perfect. So I'll have you roll a couple of them, and then Cody, I'm going to have you roll a couple of them too. Do you have d6s on you?
I can.
You don't have to. I'll get Yanis to roll them. So
he's like, it's Blackwater. We don't roll dice.
We don't roll dice here.
I will get dice.
Okay, sounds good. Cody's gone to go get dice. So what we'll do is, Yanis, I'm going to have you roll 4d6. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the 3 highest numbers and drop the lowest number. So you can just let me know what the sum total is of the 3 highest numbers.
It is a big 14.
14. Okay, do that 2 more times for me, please.
Next up, we have another 14.
Okay.
Lastly,
all 18s. What a surprise.
Lastly, we have a 15.
15. So 2 14s and a 15. Off to a great start. Cody, I'm going to get you to roll 4d6 and drop the lowest value. And you're going to do that 3 times for me.
Oh, they're all going to be negative.
Actually, you're going to do that 4 times for me. I love it. We're rolling up a character live on stream. Gonna be great. 14, 14, 15. Ooh. So while
math is hard.
Math is hard. If you want to even just read out the numbers, I can math for you if you like.
Okay, so far I have a 13,
okay,
a 7,
okay,
and a 15.
Great. And one more for me. One more set.
13.
Great. So this is something, now we get to the point where we can pause and let's bring the narrative back in. So generally what happens is when you do the 7 times, you drop the lowest one. So naturally the obvious choice would be to drop the 7 here because it's the lowest one. However, if you're someone who wishes that your character is pretty crappy at one thing for the sake of narrative, this could be an opportunity to throw that 7 in there. Now you don't have to, but it's something that we can do. If you like. What do you think? Should we because I mean, the rest of the spread is pretty decent. We've got 2 13s, 2 15s, 2 14s. That is a decently above average character at a lot of things. Should we keep the 7 or do we not keep the 7?
The meta gamer inside of me is like,
drop that 7.
drop the 7 immediately.
Because
But
you can just play dumb.
You can just play, but the DM and then the narrative is like, I like to sort of fight that instinct and really keep at least one of them, even if it's not in the negative, just keep one low.
Okay.
That's exactly, this is exactly the situation that I ended up with when I created Kale. I rolled 6 really good scores and 1 really bad.
Yeah.
And it was Sean's insistence that I keep the bad score to make the character play more interesting.
Yes.
If
Sean was here, he would yell at us to keep the 7.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is how much, when I started, how much of my role play was based off of that cue.
7.
Because I put that into wisdom, and I basically played Kale. The idea was, the reason Kale's wisdom was so bad was literally because he'd never met anyone of any other race other than human. And so anytime he met someone who wasn't a human, it just like fucking blew his mind.
Yes.
And so he was just like, world-wise, he was like a complete idiot. He'd never been out of his small town.
Super smart, probably.
Super
and quite
smart.
charismatic.
Like by books, like he knew everything book-wise, and like people really liked him, but he had never, like, people could hustle him all day long because his wisdom was super low.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I found myself wanting to play more wise than I was. And that score really helped sort of like check that instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And so especially for new players, like limiting yourself mechanically so that you're not tempted to narratively play something that's not correct to who your character is a wise decision. It's just like a nice sort of like tap on the shoulder to be like, hey, your character's actually not good at that. Just like, don't forget. Because it's super easy to stack it and be like, don't worry, I'm going to play him so he doesn't understand what's going on in the world, but your numbers never support it. So yeah, I would always tell people that
if
when
you always
start,
succeed, it's boring.
This is so true. Roll with failure. That was one of the tips we gave last week about how to role play, improve your role play. So rolling with failure. So let's keep the 7. We'll knock out one of these 13s because it's a pretty middle number. So now we have these values, and now we've got now we get to kind of decide where we're going to assign them. We're going to want to pick the skills that generally our monk is going to be quite good at. So our highest score is probably going to want to go in dexterity or punching. And then you're also probably going to want to put one of those higher ones in wisdom, because that's where your key points are going to come from. So I'm seeing the 2 15s, and for me, those are pretty logical to throw in dexterity and wisdom.
And that also affects your AC. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
You
Both of those.
don't want to make one of those like, because you could say he's really good at punching, but like wisdom being a dumb stat, like you'd always get hit. You would die. Always.
Yeah. So you're going to want to keep those probably your highest ones. So now we've gotten rid of those 2 15s. And now we have two 14s, a 13, and a 7 to play with. So the 7 is probably where we're going to want to go next. So what do we want this character to not be good at? We get a +2 to our constitution because you're a fire genasi, and you also get a +1 to your intelligence because you're a fire genasi. So those are going to be some bonuses there. I am very curious about what would happen if we threw this into like a 7 charisma, like a non-charismatic fire genasi.
Well, I mean, it would
maybe that's why they always blow up with the anger, so no one's really inclined to listen.
Exactly. It would play into this sort of like crabby, overly aggressive sort of persona.
Yes. Okay, so let's throw 7 in charisma.
Yeah, people don't like you. You're a hothead.
You're a hothead. People aren't super fond of you. Okay, so now we've got 14, 14, and a 13. We do get a +2 bonus to our constitution, so we could either make like, constitution is really good for saving throws generally. So this is kind of where my metagamer comes out, being like, let's think about what this character can do just in the assigning of things. So that's basically it for me. So what do we think? 2 14s and a 13.
I would say monks seem like they would be like have pretty high constitution to be able to endure things.
Yes. So let's put a 14 into that constitution. Chat's also just suggesting the same thing. So let's do that. So we get a 16 as our constitution, which is pretty great with the +2. Then we have a 14 and a 13. And so basically if we put the 13 in intelligence, we're going to turn it into a 14 anyway, because we get a +1 bonus
across.
And a 14 the strength. So other than being pretty hot-headed and non-charismatic, this character is statistically built quite well. We rolled well. So awesome. So these scores will transfer over into modifiers, which are located on like page 13 of the player's handbook. So our 14 for strength is a +2. Our dexterity 15 is also a +2. 16 for con is a +3. Intelligence 14 a +2. Wisdom a +2. And a 7 is -2 to charisma. So this will translate over to your saving throws, also your skills. So you can we'll fill in those numbers. I will do that after the stream.
Deception is tied to charisma, isn't it?
Deception is tied to charisma, but we're not well, you are proficient in it, so you're going to essentially have it be neutral. You don't get a +0 because the proficiency bonus at this point cancels the modifier out. So
the spy who's just really bad at lying.
Really bad at lying. Well, like actually quite middle at lying, like just like average at lying. There's no bonus.
But spies don't always necessarily rely on lying. Sometimes they rely on not getting caught.
Yes, or like lies of omission, or like subverting, telling just enough truth. Maybe. So maybe
when you see a cat burglar break in, you don't judge the cat burglar's ability based on his ability to lie once caught.
This is very true.
This is my house.
This is my house.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. So there's the modifiers there. And if you're proficient in that skill or saving throw, you get to add your proficiency bonus to it, which is pretty great. And then that is essentially your skills there. The one that is always highlighted on the sheet is your passive perception, which is a wisdom-based trait. So passive perception is essentially like if you were sitting out in the middle of a field and a bear kind of walked alongside as you were kind of not really looking for anything, would you notice it? Would you notice the kind of vague things that are happening around you without actually looking for them? So to calculate passive perception, you're going to go 10 plus your wisdom modifier. So our wisdom modifier is +2. So our wonderful monks' passive perception is 12 because they're not proficient in perception also. Great. Okay, so now that's all that done. Now we can do hit points. So at the first level, your hit points are often set under your class features at the first level. So that is generally for a monk, that is going to be a D8, I believe. I take a look at this correctly.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, that is going to be a D8 plus your Constitution modifier. So our Constitution modifier is +3. So at level 1, we are going to have 11 hit points, which seems like such a small number. That's terrifying to me.
But for level 1, that's really good.
Level 1, that's really good.
My sorcerer had 6.
Ooh. So generally, depending on what
strong
kind
breeze
of
will blow you over at that point.
Yeah, like, that's when you don't understand.
Wizards are D6s.
Constitution dump stat.
Wizards and sorcerers are D6s, right?
I believe so.
Oh yeah. So depending on what class you are, it's going to correspond to what type of hit point dice you're going to be able to roll. So I know like clerics are D8s, rangers are essentially like D10s, barbarians are D12s, fighters are D10s. It all says in the kind of first section under the class features in your book. So yeah, for our level 1 monk, we have 8 plus Constitution. And then at higher levels, you're going to roll a D8 or take 5, which is just above average, and then add your Constitution modifier for every level that you go up. So that's it. That's basically our monk. And our initiative we can calculate right now too, which is a +2, which is your dexterity modifier. And our armor class is 14 at this point, which is pretty great.
Pretty good for a non-armored person.
For a non-armored character at level 1. Right, and monks get super high AC once their dex gets and wisdom get maxed out. They can have ACs of 20, like very easily.
Easily, yeah.
Easily.
So dodgy, so fun to play.
So, and then not to mention if they have any items or anything that can put them over that kind of ability, which is great. Now, the thing that we have not done yet, the thing that Tim is probably one of the only things that Tim actually cares about this character. It's the only thing this cares about is this character's name. So if there is anyone in the chat who has any suggestions on names, that would be great. Now, we also have to consider too that our character was a hill dwarf before and is now a fire genasi. So would they take their fire genasi name? Like, because generally fire genasi are named after something. Genasi are like named after things that are reminiscent of the element that they air genasi, or an earth genasi could be named something like shale, or an air genasi named something like cloud or steam or something like that. But a hill dwarf would be named something quite different. So what do we think for naming conventions? Genasi or hill dwarf? What do you guys think? Chat, what do you think as well? If anyone has any thoughts on names? We all know Tim loves a dwarf, so that's my thoughts here.
What's interesting, because now they have this identity crisis.
Right.
So what do they stick with? And also, now that they've become a fire genasi, do they know what that entails? Like, do they know anything about fire genasi in general? Like, you could just wake up at that and you don't understand the history or naming conventions.
Yeah, or was their name given to them by the person who brought them back?
Do they remember during the reincarnation? How much do they keep? That's the thing, right? How much information do you keep of your past life?
I think you keep everything. You remember everything from your past life. With my senses, nothing changes with the reincarnation. But so you do remember everything. So I wonder if
I feel like you have to go fire genasi for naming convention.
Okay. How about, I have an idea here. I'm going to plug my favorite site ever. We're going to go over to, I'm going to share screen here for a second, and we're going to go to fantasy name generators. Here we go. So I am going to look up fantasy names, and look, we have this giant list here. See if they have any genie names, or I think it would probably be a good place to start. Yeah, let's check.
I do want to throw one name into the ring before we hit the button.
Go ahead.
I like, for a fire genasi, I like the name Cinder.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, elemental names. There we go. Cinder. Okay, let's get a couple and then we'll see what fits. Okay, any jumping out here? Luminous. Fire. Let's see if we get another fire one. Sigmus. Interesting. This is all I do. I just love incendious. I don't know. I usually give it like 5 clicks before.
Fuego is kind of interesting. There was a Fuegus before, but Fuego is kind of interesting.
Fuego? Tim's laughing. I don't know whether that means he likes it or not.
All I can think of is Guy Fieri.
All Tim can think of is Guy Fieri if we name him Fuego. If we name them Fuego. I don't know. I think Cinder might be the
Cinder is that seems quite fitting.
Cinder's quite fitting. Okay, I'm gonna close this over here and see if I can pop back into chat. I like it a lot. Let's do Cinder then. Okay, Cinder, the new fire genasi, previously a hill giant or hill dwarf.
Do we want to do a name for what they were before?
Yeah, absolutely we do. So if anyone in the chat has any good dwarf name suggestions, would love your suggestions with that.
Come on, Cody. Give us one of those gems on the spot.
Dwarf name gems. I'm going to look up some dwarf names here simply because I can.
Does someone already play Thorin? Is there a Thorin in your guys' campaign?
There are so many T names in our campaign. Okay. There's like Torin, Tor.
Okay, because I always do puns, and I made a character. His name was Thorin Mathide.
Thorin. Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah, DM hated it too, but it was great.
Now, the one thing that I would say is that Fantasy Name Generator does split names down the gender binary, but that is okay. So you can kind of, if you're flipping back and forth, you can kind of figure out what you like.
We've got a suggestion in chat here for Brock, but spelled Brokk.
I mean, that would follow the
I do like
dwarven
that.
naming conventions. I'm getting some eyebrow raised, and I think
Positive eyebrow
approval-
raising?
But that's a positive eyebrow raise. Tim, would you say that's a positive eyebrow raise? Yeah. So we've got a name. This is Brock.
Brock.
Previous,
Brock is
the artist
great.
previously known as Brock.
The now Fire Genasi, previously known as Hill Dwarf, or was it Mountain Dwarf?
Hill.
I'll rewatch the stream earlier.
It was
and I'll-
Hill. It was Hill.
It was Hill. Okay, Hill Dwarf Brock, now known as Cinder. Wow. See,
The name could have
we
been
made a
Hildorf.
character.
Oh, we do need a last
name.
Hildorf.
Yeah, Brock Hildorf.
Brock Hildorf.
Brock Hildorf. For the dwarf. He needs a last name for the dwarf.
Brock Hildorf.
Hildorf. Got it. It's done. Brock Hildorf.
I'm Brock Hildorf, the Hildorf.
Yes.
Yes,
100%.
ORF.
Yeah.
Oh,
ORF.
100%. Hildorf is how we're
Yeah.
spelling Hildorf. Yes, 100%. So
And
yeah.
Cinder is like Prince. It's just one name.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, whether you choose to have your character have a giant long list of names, epithets afterwards. Neppy also has a giant like name with epithets afterwards. Like, I don't think I've ever actually shared like her full title because I've never had to.
Is Cinder spelled Cinder or Sinder?
I spelled it with a C, but we can spell it with an S if you like.
No, I don't know. I was just thinking. Well, let's spell it with a C.
We'll spell it with a C. Okay. So whether you want your character to have epithets afterwards, or whether you want them to just have one name, or first name, middle names, last name, family name, you want to trace your lineages back, you do what you want to, as long as the narrative informs it. But so we, this evening, with the help of chat, have created this wonderful character, Cinder, which is what?
In chat, someone suggested Cinder Brock.
Oh.
Brock is the last name, so that it sounds like Cinder Block.
I really like
And Brock
that.
is the first name of his previous. It's pretty good.
I think it's great. I think I don't think that's like a retcon. I think that's just a like.
No, it's just an addition.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But often goes by Cinder to like once they learn more.
Like
about
last name is Brock, first
Yeah.
name Cinder
Yeah.
Brock.
I love it. Fantastic. I'm here to say yes.
Yes,
That's what I'm doing,
definitely.
right? So this is awesome. Thank you so much to everyone in chat who helped us out. Thank you, Yanis and Cody. And thank you to Tim for his mildly approving side glances and little laugh.
Clip flip.
There we go.
That's
was
what we
there
all
the whole
wanted.
time.
He was there the whole time. He has been there the whole time. So please, thank you so much for joining us. I will post this stuff on our Instagram, and we'll throw up some of the stats in our Instagram story, and talk about it. So please come follow us there. If you contributed, there was a whole bunch of people in chat who contributed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just know that this character will be appearing somewhere in the Blackwater universe, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much. This character is an homage to the Gravel Boys. And that means a lot that you contributed that for us. So thank you. And we hope to do something like this again. So if you have any suggestions for us to do that, please send them in.
I would love that I'd love it if it was like a situation where we know, like, because we created the character,
Yes.
that they were a political spy, but Blackwater never realized it. So it's like, oh, we're just a lamplighter. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And like, we'll never be able to play more than that.
Neither. I'm going to just be sitting in the corner going, just like losing my mind.
I want to do a investigation check.
Yeah.
Why?
Can I do an insight check?
Just because.
Because this person seems shifty. Why are they
I'm
lighting
gonna
lamps
inside that
weird?
lamp.
Yeah. I'm
It's
going
good
to
for
animate
you.
the lamp and
The
talk to
charisma
it.
is super low. So
Super low.
Are you a
Neppy with
spy? No.
Nobody lies to
Question
Neppy.
mark.
No.
Nobody lies to
No?
Neppy. One of my favorite moments that Neppy has had about her insight being so high is Letters was saying to Hakar, that smuggler, he's like, look Neppy in the eye and tell her that you don't smuggle humans or don't smuggle people. And I was just like, oh, what a good moment. That was so great. That was one of my favorites with my high insight.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for joining us. I learned a ton, and I mean, it's going to change how I roll characters in the future. I realize it's much more fun to leave things to fate.
Leave it to the dice and leave it to your, like, and let your DM help you.
I also might be calling Cody and M every time I roll a character for assistance.
Honestly, Yanis, nothing would bring me more joy.
I will always roll a character with someone. So.
Always.
But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Join us this Wednesday night at 8 p.m. for the premiere of our new show. We're all very, very excited for it.
Thank you.
And then Saturday night at 8 p.m. for our regularly scheduled campaign.
Yes, we have a couple special announcements on Saturday too coming out. So
exciting! If you guys haven't seen the most recent episode, it is a good one. It is one of my favorite cliff we've ever had, just because the amount of lore Tim drops very quickly and M's brain exploding. You can literally see it happening on air.
Yeah.
So join us Saturday to see where that goes, and then our show will be back next week Monday, and I believe
which is
Sean
Tim's.
will be back for us,
Sean will be back, and it's Tim's DM episode. So if you have any questions for Tim about DMing or anything about the world, if you want me and Sean to take off our ear,
you'll watch it, you'll know. You're pretty good at separating.
Generally, yeah, I'll separate it. I'm doing my best not to metagame ever. So please send your questions this way, whether that's over Instagram, or you can email them to us at blackwaterdnd@gmail.com, or you can leave them in the chat and I will pick them up and make sure that I pass them along. He's really excited. We've had to push back his episode a couple weeks, and he's been so gracious with his scheduling. So I'm really excited to have him on too. Something that came up as well that Tim and I were talking about is an episode of Chatwater. I want to talk about playing D&D with your partner and what that's like. Because there are 2 couples in this campaign, 3 technically, because Adam and Sean are roommates.
They are a couple.
They are a couple of roommates. So I think it's really interesting about.
Why do you keep saying roommates?
Right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll just retract that. They're a couple. So playing D&D with your spouse is its own, like, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that, like, in playing any sort of game with your partner involves a bunch of different stuff. So I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. Also had a request at some point to do an episode of Chatwater on therapy and how you can use RPGs in the context of therapy. So these are all things that I have heard. We are percolating on them, and they will be coming down the line.
One of my favorite things about the show is that it's grown from a lore show about Blackwater to just like a show about D&D, and I absolutely love it.
I love it. And somebody else asked us as well a couple weeks ago is when we were going to have Letters and Neppy's AMAs, and they are coming. Sean and I talk about Letters and Neppy all the time, so we figured that we would put ourselves last at the bottom, make sure we got everyone else on the show first, and then have us at the end. So it'll be Tim's episode, something in the middle, Sean, something, and then myself. And then, oh my gosh, we'll actually be able to start talking about the campaign that we've played in the past, like the arcs and the story arcs that we've played. That is what's happening. The future of Chatwater. We'll get there.
We're not going to get there.
No, we'll never get there.
We're never getting there.
We're never going to get there.
That's the beauty of Chatwater, is we don't actually talk about the show. We talk about all sorts of other stuff.
Talk about literally everything else.
If we get there,
chat, there's no water.
We get there, it's canceled.
It's canceled. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever run out of things to talk about.
Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. We went a little bit long tonight, but it was great to roll a character with you guys. Keep an eye out for Cinder in the future, and we will see you guys Wednesday for our brand new show at 8 p.m. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Make a kiss, Cody. Do it, Cody.
Kind of kiss or blow a kiss. Do it.
Thank you.